Here we go. We're live. Turn this thing up a little bit. There we go. Hope everybody can hear me all right. Yeah, time got by me a little bit there. I was talking to Ann. Next thing I know, hell, it's 8 o'clock. Get this party started. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Distilling 101 Q&A. Bring you questions. We got answers. I got to get this link to Clint. I know he's probably still working. I ain't heard from him, so that means he's busy. There's a notification. Good. That's working. There's Clint. And all right, got that taken care of. It's out. Where's my handy dandy page? Somewhere around here. My little cheat sheet. Is that it? No, it's not it. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's get the links out. Make sure everything's right. Good deal. So I guess old Clint's been busy, man. He's doing pretty well, I guess. Talked to him and got him a little side gig going. He's been working on his car and trying to make a little extra money to do some repairs on his car and do some other things. And I think he's enjoying it. That's what I think. I think he's making some pretty decent money and enjoying the gig. What's going on, Michael? Good to see you, brother. What's up, Justin? Not much, brother. What have you been up to? I hear you got some stuff in the works. We need to get you on here sometime and talk to you. Oh, I'm losing track. Did I share to this page? Let me see. My mind. So I'm not able to see. Let's see. Did I share here? No, I did not. Okay, so let me get these shared. What's going on, Patty? What's up, Seashine? So I would ask you what you got going on, Justin, but I want to get you on here sometime and maybe, I don't know, next Tuesday if you got time. I've got somebody else that Phil wants to bring on. I want to kind of be a surprise. So I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet. And I got to talk to the individual too that owns this company. And I don't want to say too much because I might give it away, but something pretty unique and different. But yeah, I'd love to get you on here and talk about your progress. I know you've been looking for a place to call home, a distilling home. I know there was some auctions and stuff you were looking at. And a couple places that look pretty interesting, but I'm not sure exactly what your laws are there where you are. If they'll really, the best way to do it is find a place that will allow you to open up a distillery that will allow you to sell drinks by the drink there at your distillery, restaurant, whatever you can kind of combine if they'll allow that. Some states will. It's funny. Some states will allow it, some won't. But be able to sell it by the drink. That way you're not just bringing people in and you're limited to giving them one shot of each or, and kind of going that route as a tasting room. You can just, all out have like a bar and a restaurant and a distillery because that helps a lot. Distribution, and marketing, that goes a long way. And getting your product out and getting it in people's hands, goes a long, long way. Because really, and I think Steel Talking was talking about it this past week, was talking about, distribution and stuff. And that's, you can be one of the better, distillers out there and have a great product. But if you're not able to get it into people's hands, then it's all for naught. Because if you're not able to sell it, it's tough to depend on, just internet sales and shipping. That is great. That's a big plus. And just having walk-ins to buy, that's tough. So you got to get your product out on those shelves and and marketing. Having that marketing is really the stumbling block for a lot of people. A lot of people can make great shine, but if you don't have the backing and to market it and to advertise it and get your name out there. And a lot of people can market themselves. There's quite a few people that do well, getting on the internet and marketing themselves. Nick Calo's done a great job at that. He worked his butt off. Him and JB and Trey and JB all over the country and marketing and stuff. He did a great job at that. And working out some deals like he did, I guess, with the people down at Elvis, at Graceland and stuff. So he's done well, marketing and doing that. And that's really tough. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work. And when you're trying to distill and do that at the same time, it puts a lot on your plate. So, trying to micromanage is really tough for a lot of people. Damn, I stopped at the same spot as I did last week. So they cut me. All right. So we'll pick up right at Weber. Let's see. Got a lot of people coming in. Awesome. Getting there with it. Going to make it happen here eventually. Yeah, if you can find, I don't know what the laws are there, but if you can find a place where you can distill, you can open up like a little restaurant, serve snacks and light stuff, burgers, dogs, whatever, and sell your liquor and buy the drink even. Definitely helps a lot and gets the word out of mouth and people coming in. And if you can do that, maybe make a beer and have some lots of different distillates and maybe even your own beer to offer up and even some wines, that would be awesome. That would it's a lot of work though, but it's definitely, that would be awesome. That way you could see instant success. A lot of people want to open up and have a whiskey, they want to sell bourbon. Okay, well, you're going to wait 3 or 4 years unless you want to do an MGP, and sell somebody else's until you can get, your barrel matured and aged whiskey or bourbon. So that's going to take some time. What's going on, Joe? Good to see you, brother. Country Cool's in the house. Top of the evening to you, brother. I hope some of these newcomers have some questions for us. That's what we're here for. Maybe a bit busy getting ready to head to the jam next week. Yeah, me too, brother. We'll see you there for sure. A week after, if I'm not sure what my schedule will be, but I will know by then, and we can talk. Yeah, we'll definitely meet up at the jam. Good to hear from you, man. Hopefully y'all got some questions. What's up, Cave Daddy? We should warm up a little, man. It's been pretty warm here, but it was worse. A few weeks ago, it was in the hundreds here. It was way hot, mid upper 90s with an over 100 index. Crazy. What's going on, O'Shane? But did you? Carolina's got some. South Carolina did get some rain this past couple of days, didn't I? Know you're all in a drought down there, and I saw the storms blow through here, and I saw some cloud working its way over there. So hopefully, distribution is a killer. It's a killer for a lot of distilleries. A lot of these distilleries that you see auctioning off their stuff, they made a decent product. They just couldn't get it on the shelves and get it sold, and you can make, I'm not gonna say the best, but you can make some of the top best stuff out there. And if you can't market it, you're doomed for failure, and especially trying to go into it just doing bourbon only. A lot of people, I want to sell bourbon. I'm a bourbon. I love bourbon. I'm going to, and you can't just go in with what you do. You got to kind of appeal to everybody. So you've got to have some gin, some vodka, some clear liquors that you can sell instantly, right? Or just after just a short time of jar aging and a little bit of maturation, esterification there. But, trying to go into business and wait 2 to 4 years for a whiskey or bourbon, it's going to be tough. So, if you have a lot of money and a lot of backing and you can do that and not, have to worry about making payments to a bank or something, then that's awesome. But most people can't do that. Non-alc, I've heard of that too, O'Shane. Yeah, I it's kind of like near beer, but near beer at least has, my grandfather used to love his beer, and when he started getting older, he started getting diabetes, and he couldn't have it. And my grandmother told him no, so he started drinking the near beer and O'Doul's. I think he drank a lot of that O'Doul's, and it was good. It tasted like a beer. It just didn't have the alcohol, so he got that satisfaction of having a beer taste. And he loved beer, and he'd put the salt in it, which wasn't good for him either. But yeah, he drank the shit out of that O'Doul's. But at least it tasted like a beer. I can't imagine an alcohol-free vodka tasting like vodka. I mean, it's just, what does it taste like? What's going on, Roddy? Good to see you, brother. Good to see Mr. Shiner. What causes the white bacteria on top of a mash during fermentation? Can be two things. It can be a lactobacillus, which is a lactic acid, which is a natural organic acid that develops if it spreads. So if you get it, it's something that you want to keep cleaned up, right? So it's something that's okay to get later in fermentation. I'll explain why in a little bit, but you definitely don't want it at the beginning because it will compete with the yeast for the sugars, and it'll also consume alcohol. So it will definitely cut way, way back on your production. We'll miss you, Stephen, brother. Hey, we hope you get to feeling better. Yeah, we all have our bouts with depression, brother. We're here for you, though. Anytime you want to message me, brother, just give me a call, message me, and yeah, we'll be back Saturday. Hope you get to feeling better, brother. We're here for you, though. Anytime you want to talk. But yeah, lactobacillus, it's a bacteria that will, if you use like a wood paddle, you need to clean that wood because it gets in the pores. Clean up fermenters, everything. So a lot of people like it because if you get it late in the fermentation, I've got some right now on my potato mash because it's been a little bit longer to run. I put it off because I had to get a new column. Glass broke, and then I realized I only had one tri clamp and two 4-inch ends on it, so I have to get another tri clamp. So I'm having to wait on stuff on that. So it's developed a lactose can give it a creamy and unique flavor, and it can be okay, and especially if it's later in fermentation when all the alcohol's already, the yeast have done their thing and they've converted most of the sugars to alcohol. If you get it right at the end, it can be okay. What's going on, Beowulf? So that's okay, but you don't want it early, because it will compete with the yeast, and sometimes it'll beat the yeast out, and you get a stuck fermentation, and that lacto just goes to work eating up all the sugars and eventually alcohol once a lot of your sugars are gone. And another thing is called Kahm yeast, Kahm yeast. It's a wild yeast that can get on there, and it can cause the whiteness too. And let me pull up a couple of pictures for you. So you'll be able to kind of tell the difference. And I'll get a picture here of the lacto if they have any good pictures. And I'm not seeing good pictures. Damn. They're showing microscopic views. Come on. I could probably, that's crazy. Really not getting good pictures thanks to Google. That's kind of okay, but it's not really showing it good. So, damn, it's hard to describe, and I can describe it by talking about it, but a lot of times it'll be like white bubbles with like veins, and filament almost like veins. And I'm not getting good pictures at all. This sucks. Why am I getting some picture of a girl with AI? Google sucks. And their pictures of these, I get much better pictures off the news group. I don't think I have any pictures saved though, and I should, but I'm gonna have to look because just Google's not giving me much here. Let me see. Is okay, yeah, that got me a little perfect picture right here. This is a good picture, kind of. Yeah, that's a good picture of it. And this is a decent picture of it because it can look a little bit different. Shit, sometimes. Fuck. It can look a little bit different sometimes than others. Sometimes it looks a little nastier and you don't get the filament look. But there's a few pictures here that are pretty good. So we'll grab these 3 pictures and show you this first. All right, so let me grab those and throw them over from screenshots into my distilling pics. That way next time I'll have them ready to go. All right. Now let me add that to the stream pictures. And I like doing this because a picture's worth 1,000 words. I can sit here and describe it till I'm blue in the face, but it's hard to describe that. And you can see the veins I'm talking about and some of the bubblage to the right there where it bubbles up and you get the little lightning veins running through it everywhere. That's a pretty good, perfect rendition of a lacto bacillus infection. What's going on, Dwayne? Shit. Hit the wrong button there. How's it going, Dwayne? Good to see you, bro. So this is what a lacto looks like. Not much, Bear Wolf. We're just chilling, brother. What's going on, Gip? Buddy, you might have to. I finally got my column fixed and ready to go, and I realized they only sent me 1 tri-clamp with it, and it has 4 inches at both ends, so I have to get another tri-clamp. So I had to get on the line. No feel, Billy. He got me some on the way tomorrow. Hopefully, you can get him in the mail tomorrow. But yeah, Phil take care of me. So anybody doesn't know, Phil Billy, if you need anything, he's the man to go to. Had some. Well, you get to the bad dad jokes. All right, so Rodney, does it kind of look like this? Is this like this, or let me pull up another picture of it here and let's see. I captured 3 at the same time. So lacto can look like this. It can look like this. So sometimes it's not really filament. You don't see the veins a lot. Sometimes it's more just like the bubbles here. So you'll sometimes see something like this. And then sometimes it'll be something more less pronounced like that. That's kind of the start of it. That's kind of how it starts. And then it progresses to that right from here. It'll start to here. Then it'll look like that. And then eventually it's just going to look like that if it goes longer. Now, let me get some pictures of calm yeast. And then we'll talk about how to get rid of this. So calm yeast looks a lot like the lacto. And sometimes you'll get both. Trying to find a decent picture. Okay, there's a decent picture. So it also happens in a lot of different fermentations, like fermenting pickles, like this. That's what this is, fermenting pickles. But it looks the same on top. Let's find some more pictures, though. That one actually, I don't know. That's the lacto infection. Somebody's asking what that is. That's lacto. That's not calm yeast. So you can't always trust Google pics either because sometimes they are not right. There's calm. And this kind of looks a little bit like a lacto. So you can see how some people will confuse it with the lacto. but it's more of a film than a bubbles with filaments. So um, hopefully these pictures will show you a difference. Yeah, that's a lot like this other one, but I'll add that to the pictures as well. And here is more what a calm yeast will look like. And then after I show these pictures, I will talk about what we can do to prevent that. And A is, oh, I guess I better get them out of screenshots and move them over. Shoot. Takes just a second. Okay, let's just go ahead and grab this one. So this is like on some pickles, but you can see a little bit like a lacto there. So I think it might have a little lacto right in the very center, and around it. But a lot of that is a calm, cakey looking film type yeast. There's some better pictures here. Let me swap those over first, and then I can go through them real quickly. But I like using pictures because this is hard to describe, and you can talk to your blue in the face, and until you do, it's just really hard to describe a picture or what it looks like. And I don't, what you're seeing. So if I saw a picture of what you had, I could definitely identify it. But this is a good picture of a commies. You can see that it's a film and it kind of wrinkles and it just forms a film, and CO2 still underneath that film kind of building up. So you get trapped gases underneath this film, and that's what creates these little pillowy, pillow looking areas. And here's another one kind of in a jar like the first one, but that's more of a calm yeast. That's what'll calm yeast. And it's just wild yeast, and both are harmless, but both will compete with the yeast, the distilling yeast that you're using, and both will consume alcohol and sugars. So it's definitely something that you don't want, especially at the beginning. Towards the end, it's less critical. But well, like my vodka, it's the potato mash. It's been going for a while. I should have distilled it a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, but I got broken part on my column. I had to get a new part for the column, and then I realized I need another 4-inch tri-clamp. So waiting on that. So Rodney, does either of those look like what we're talking about, or is it something different? Fungus and molds, usually if it's got some colors or some hairs, then we start getting a little bit concerned because you're dealing with more of a mold. But if it has colors too, that will actually, I think I have a little guide that Amanda posted once, and I thought it was awesome. So I scarfed it. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, helps if I go to the right file folder. Let me see if I can find that. And it helps you determine, is it mold? Is it just a fungus? Here we go. Yeah, this is a great little. All right, here's a little question answer. Is it on top or underneath the liquid? On top, usually where most people sit. Okay. Is it on the neck of the cardboard or sides of the bucket? So yeah, if so, does it cover the entire? Yes. Okay, it's probably a pellicle, right? And that's what they call that infection. It's called a pellicle. But if the case is it red, green, black, or blue? If that's yes, then it's probably if there is anything red, green, black, or blue, it's probably going to be, if it's not one of your ingredients, it's mold. And it's not good. But if it's fuzzy, like I talked here, is it fuzzy? Does it have hairs growing off of it and stuff? If that's the case, it's mold. If it's foamy and chunky, it's snotty, it's probably a pellicle. The foamy, chunky, like what we were looking at, can be a pellicle of either the calm yeast or a lactobacillus, in which case it's going to be fine. In fact, if you want to, calm yeast, I wouldn't try to save, but some people want to save the lactobacillus, and you can skim that off. the surface with a strainer, just skim it up and put it in a jar and put it in the refrigerator. Poke a couple of holes maybe in the top so it doesn't build up a lot of pressure. And and you can use that. And next time you do a fermentation where you want, like if you're doing a peach cobbler, and you want that cobbler flavor, the creaminess of like the crust to go along with the peaches. That way, it makes it more of a cobbler taste instead of just a peach brandy. You can get the cobbler effect. Adding oats and some of this can give you creaminess to pull through that cobbler effect, and that's kind of a little advanced, but that's how a lot of people will get that cobbler taste. Is you either using oats and lacto, but at the end you would add the lacto. You start with the oats and the other ingredients and kind of do a mountain brandy, and that's no trick. But yeah, and then add the lacto, using your hydrometer when it gets down to 1.010 or a little less. Then you can throw that lacto in there, let it work a little while, a week or two, and get creamy, skim it off, save it, and then clear it, distill it, right? But to get rid of it. And Spencer, I will get to your question right as soon as I'm done with this, and brother, I promise. So stick with us. But to get rid of these things, when you're adding your grains, if you can add most of your grains and you're not depending on the malt. If you have a malt, then you're going to have to take your chances. So you have to keep everything clean. Or you can use potassium metabisulfate, which is called Camden tablets. A lot of people don't like using all that stuff. They don't want to don't want to complicate it. So the best thing to do is start with boiling water, and either when you're using sugars, you can get this lactose infection from sugar. I've gotten it from sugars before. In fact, the potato mash that I got now, it came from the sugar I added, no doubt about it, because I cooked the hell out of the potatoes. Everything was clean. The only thing that I added below the 160, and I should have known better, was some sugar because I wanted to bring up the gravity a little bit more. And as such, that's what brought that calm yeast on. So wild yeast can be on just about anything. So can your lacto. And keeping everything real clean, keeping airlocks. And a lot of people don't like airlocks, or keeping at least a towel over it can keep it from just getting in from the air. And yeah, and fruit. If you start with like peaches or fruit or any kind of fruit, great place for lactobacillus and acetobacters even to be on. So it's always good to add that heat. But winemakers will use something called potassium metabisulfate, and that's called Camden tablets. For those that have read a little bit, learned a little bit about making wines, you can add that to it if you don't want to, because winemakers don't want to add heat to their fruit because it does affect the flavors of a wine, and it will take a lot of your phenolics and a lot of your flavonoids and polyphenols and all that away, hydrophenols and everything away from a lot of that fruit flavor. So they use these Camden tablets instead, and they gas off, and it's after a few days it will kill everything in there. Though if you dose it properly, don't want to use too much, too little, but if you use it properly, it will kill off all the wild yeast, any bacteria, anything like that in there. But if you don't want to use that, using hot temperatures to start with, and will kill everything off, and keeping your equipment clean and keeping a towel or something over your fermenter, and that'll help avoid that problem. All right, Spencer's got a question. Hey, boss, you got any tips on how to dry corn quickly? If I leave it on the tarp outside, all the damn squirrels you have to, it's tough. So you're malting your corn, is that what you're doing? And that's why it's wet, or you've got sweet corn it's best to let it dry on the stalk. So if you can, leave it out in the fields and let it dry, especially like a field corn. But if you're buying sweet corn by the cob, just go ahead and use it wet, and because you're going to get a lot of your sugars out of that juice. So I just grind it up. You can grind it up cob and all, or you can cut it off the cob and cook it up either way. But if it's like if it's a field corn, it's best to let it dry. But if you're trying to malt corn, put it between some sheets outside, lay a sheet down, get it wet, lay all your, have it like on a patio or something, of course, and then lay all your corn out, and then get another sheet and wet it and keep it wet. And then once it gets dry, if you have a screen, you can, make you a little, get you a little frame and staple your screen to it, and have it double layered so they can't get into it, or you can, just bring it in. I've heard people putting it in pillowcases and putting it in the dryer. That's probably, if you can do a low temp, maybe okay. I've seen people make little bird cages, like hamster cages with the screen, and have a fan and just have a little motor running that squirrel cage and just having that tossing and tumbling. And it also helps remove those little radicals, those little roots that grow on your malted corn. Those are really bitter. So if you can dry it out and remove those at the same time, you don't want to use a high temperature though to dry it. So you don't want to get anywhere above the 145 mark or so, because you'll start denaturing some of those enzymes in there. But malted corn is a tough way to go, and it gives great flavor. But it's such a pain in the ass. Most people don't do it anymore. We used to do it back in the day. It was one of the ways we could only get good conversions. We didn't have all the, amylases and stuff. So it was either malt your corn and get what you could out of it that way. We didn't have barley, we didn't have a lot of the malts and stuff to get. If we were lucky, we could get some malted wheat, and that's in the mountains. I'm sure a lot of other places that grew up around the farms, they had a little better selection of what we had in middle Appalachia. But malted corn was about one of the only ways you could get to convert. And then you'd have to cook your corn at a low temperature for a long, long time. And still, we got low conversions, and we still have to add sugar. Most people just said, fuck it, and just use, cornmeal and sugar, because that was so much easier. And people, it made an okay drink if you distill it properly. It was okay. It wasn't too hot if you knew how to tone it down. And if you threw some oats in there, that'd help a lot. But for the most part, people don't realize it, but most of the moonshine, I'd say a high percentage back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even early 80s, was a lot of cornmeal and sugar, especially for people in Appalachia, the Appalachian shiners, for sure. We just didn't have access to a lot of other stuff. But yeah, you can air dry on definitely low heat. You want to keep it below 145 if you can. That way you can kind of, the alpha enzymes, they will denature at above 155, 60, right? But you've got some beta enzymes in there as well that you want to, kind of keep. And those are around 140, 45. So if you can keep it lower than that, that would be great. But yeah, I've heard people using zip up pillowcases and filling it up, putting it in the dryer. Now, I guess if you use fabric softeners and dryer sheets in their dryer a lot, might get some of those, a little bit of those to go along with it. I don't know. I've never tried it. I've heard people doing it, but I've got a frame with screens, and I've thought about making the little tumbler cage, because when I saw a picture, somebody had one, I think it was on YouTube or somewhere years ago, and it was pretty slick, and it just, they had a little slow motor going, and it just tumbled it, and they had fans blowing on it, and it looked really good, and it was removing those radicals really well too. And it was, it looked pretty cool, It'd definitely be something to try. It'd take a little bit of woodworking to make it. It's just basically it looks like a paddle wheel, or, like a, one of those electric generating water wheels, and it just had, the screen stapled all the way around it, and they had a little door on the side to add it and latch it. And had, just ran on a little axle in the middle and spun around. And they had big fans blowing on it. I thought that was cool as shit, and that'd be really good. But I've just always done mine on screens, framed up 2x4s with stapled screens, and you get two of it and layer it, and it dries it out really well. If you happen to grow something else, it dries out real well on that too. I got a little dual use out of it. It's great for, got a little Mary Jane drying. It works well for those too, if you got that, to dry. What's going on? Are you the comedy and horror? That's good. I like Damon's got some good horror stuff. He likes the scary movies and all that good stuff. He has some pretty good podcasts on that. Looks like he ex-old ladies bathwater. There's that dad joke humor. Yeah, man. Okay, I have a 18-inch copper column on a keg steel. I'm going to put a sight glass on it. Awesome. I see setups with it mounted on the bottom and some with it on the top and some in the middle. Is their preferred location for it? Good, excellent question. It's nice to have at the bottom so you can see if you're puking. But if you want to put some the copper mesh in there to help, clean up some of the sulfides in your, vapor, it's best to have it kind of in the middle or the top because you don't want puke getting caught into that screen and cause some obstruction. You get obstruction, then you get some pressure built up in the steel, and it's harder to control temperature. And controlling the temperature is a lot. You don't want it to run away from you because it's a little bit tougher to make your cuts if you get too hot too fast, right? Because you just blow everything off pretty much like a stripping run when you're trying to do a finishing run. It reacts more like that. But yeah, at the top would be good, especially if you're going to put the copper mesh in it. If not, having one at the bottom is good, so you can see how much puking up if you're getting a lot of puking up. In the middle would be well too, because you're probably, I don't know if y'all have done much cooking or not, but it's hard to boil water without it foaming up a lot, right? So you can imagine what a beer is going to do, and that's basically what your mash is. Your grain mash is a beer. It's almost, it's like a beer. It's even, got the carbonation of a beer if you ever tasted it. So a lot of people degas to avoid, this foaming up. A lot of people throw some butter on top of it to keep the foaming up. They even got commercial products that'll help it. I don't do the commercial stuff. You can use the butter. That works well, depending on what you're doing. But if you have it in the middle, you're definitely not going to puke up that far. If you are, you definitely know to cut back, and you can put the mesh in the middle if you have another section to go above that. So it's just a preference. It'd be great if you had a couple, one to put at the bottom to watch puking, one at the top to put your mesh in. But you also, since you have, what is it? Is it a 2-inch diameter? If it's 2 inches in diameter, you can put that copper mesh inside there. Do not ever put copper mesh in small 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, or even 1 inch pipe, because you're going to create some pressure and some potential hazards. So when we talk about mesh, we're talking about putting inside that 2-inch or inside of a big sight glass. It's 2 inches around, 1.5 inches. That will allow a lot of vapor around it, and it's not going to restrict a lot of vapor flow. A lot of steels, you got 10, 15 gallon steels with 1/2 inch copper coming off. You're getting a lot of pressure as it is. Absolutely never put anything in those lines to try to remove. No, I've seen people do it and say, "Oh, well, you said to put it." I'm telling you, that's why every time I say it, I have to disclaim: do not put that in a small diameter, copper, because it will create a lot of back pressure, and anytime you increase the pressure, you're increasing the temperature inside that pot. And if you can't gradually go from 196, 198 to where you start working off and you go directly to the 210, 215 boiling over, then a lot of it's going to be really difficult to make your cuts, because everything's just going to come straight off at the same time, kind of like stripping. And it's much more difficult to make your cuts. It depends. Sometimes it doesn't have much of an odor. Sometimes we do get certain acids. I mentioned the lactic acid being one of the organic acids. There's a lot of different organic acids that are created during fermentation. One of them is called butyric acid, and it's the same acid that's in your stomach that helps you break down, food and stuff. And it's what gives the vomit smell, right? It's what puts the smell in the vomit. So if you've got one that smells like vomit, you've got butyric acid. And that's generally caused by stressed yeast. And sometimes you can just let it run its course and it'll go away, and you can get some unique pineapple and unique flavors. Sometimes it won't go away and you just get shitty flavors, and it's going to be tough to neutralize. And you might be able to get it through a column and get a lot of that taste out and proof it down, run it again or something, and get a lot of it out. Sometimes you just can't. So there's failures, and we always stress keeping the yeast happy. There are some benefits in advanced distilling to stressing your yeast in certain ways, like temperature. Alan, we talked about that on here. to increase some of your heads, and in some of those heads you can get unique flavors. But that's kind of an advanced topic and something that you really have to do under a controlled environment and not have other stresses at the same time. Other stresses being having it go acidic really quickly and not having anything in there to buffer it. So if you get like hot, acidic, low nutrient environment, it's going to make for some pretty shitty shine, and it's not going to make it good. It's not going to be good for you. So keeping those yeast happy, especially when you get first started out, keeping a good temperature that your yeast, keep it in the range your yeast prefers, have a little bit of nutrient that your yeast is going to need, and use the oyster shells to help keep things buffered. So, especially in your high sugar washes, or if you're adding a lot of sugar, you really need that because pH tends to crash in some of those vigorous fermentations like that. Good question, though. Looks more like the first pit. It's a lacto. Yeah, that's a lacto. It's okay. So, if you get like red and green and it's all fuzzy and shit, yeah, it's over. Don't ever try to drink anything with those molds, black molds especially. Those can be very, very toxic. But a lot of the issues with the molds are allergies. And if you have an allergy to any of those molds, it can be fatal, or it can make you really, really sick. So anytime you get a mold, when in doubt, pitch it out. It's just not worth it. Usually it's just a little bit of corn and thyme and a little amylase, or, a little bit of sugar. So it's just not worth your health, but it's good to come ask. And most times it's going to be a lacto or a calm yeast. It's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be that. But like we say, if you don't use those high temperatures, if you don't keep things clean, a lot of the people, I've never done that and I've never had, right. And you won't have that problem until you do. And there's always going to be that first time. And when you have it, it's going to be on one of those expensive heirloom corns and barley, and, you got chocolate malts and all this expensive stuff in there, or a blue agave, and all the blue expensive yeast and stuff, or, you got some Quebec yeast or some really expensive, stuff in there. And all of a sudden it's going to happen to you on one of those. And it's really going to hurt because, you can get a lot of money invested in some of these, fermentations, especially with your specialty grains, heirloom corns, and specialty malts and stuff. It's just not like using cracked corn and a little cheap sugar, right? So keep that in mind and keep those yeast happy, and we won't have as many of those problems. So well, if it happened towards the end of the run, it's going to be okay. Just skim it off, let your grain, everything go ahead and settle on down and clear up a bit, and just siphon it, over, and try to keep that yeast bed undisturbed. But after you get done, I wouldn't keep any of the yeast bed or any of that because it's already been infected with the lacto. You can keep it and use it. Like I say, you can add it to another fermentation if you like that flavor. And you want to keep that flavor, you can jar it up, put it in a quart jar, and keep it in the refrigerator, and add that late in another fermentation to give you that creaminess that it can add. So it's a good tool. But after you do that, just remember, you got to clean the shit out of everything. And that means really hot boiling water, getting it hot, then using star sand or something like that to disinfect it. And I mean, if you use anything wood, you need to throw it in boiling water and kill everything off. And that's why a lot of places, especially wineries and places like that, they hate lacto because they have to break down. They got these huge vats, that they ferment in, and they got to clean everything and sterilize everything. So, I mean, they're literally inside these things with mopping this shit, using, a lot of star sand and, spraying it with really hot water and just, it's a pain in the ass. If you got a big 5,000 gallon, tank, it sucks. So they go to every means they can. That's why they use that potassium metabisulfate religiously, to keep all that stuff killed off, because they just can't deal with those down times and clean times like that. It's a financial burden. Cecil just started, only 7 runs in. Well, that's pretty good. When running brandy on my pot with Thumper, I've seen to run with a pencil lead stream. So how many gallons we got? And I've seen to run with a drip, having trouble getting any flavor, and have run both ways along with extremely slow. Slow doesn't help a lot. We tell everybody low and slow to keep people from scorching. And a lot of times people don't let it clear good. They get a lot of solids over into the still. And if you run it hard and fast, a lot of times you're going to scorch those. They settle down. It doesn't get stirred up and they end up getting scorched. Once you scorch something really badly, it's no bueno. You're not going to get that out. Pitch it, use it, grass cleaner or glass cleaner or grass killer or starting your charcoal or cleaning metal before you weld it, cleaning countertops, disinfectant, hand sanitizer, whatever you want to use it for. But yeah, I will say, Cecil, a lot of people have the misconception that running a peach brandy, when you get done, you take a big drink of it and it's just going to smack you with peach. It's not going to happen, especially when you first start out. The distillation process itself is done to remove pollutants, right? And to get something clean, to get water clean. So if we want to get the cleanest water or the cleanest alcohol, we distill. When we distill water, you could take peach water. I mean, you could have peach juice and distill it, and when you get done, it's water and a lot of concentrated peach flavor still in the boiler. But what comes off the drip is pretty much going to be a very light peachy water. That's what distillation does. It removes impurities. Same thing when we distill alcohol. It removes these impurities. And unfortunately, what we consider something good is still part of the process of getting removed. So we have to try to get around the distillation process and keep some of those, pollutants or bad things in, right? So using an infuser, jar rigs or multiple little copper vessels works well. A thumper will help for sure, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But several jar rigs really help a lot because that first one adds some flavor, that second one will add even more flavor, and that third one will add even more. If you just have the one, it's going to be like just with the thumper. It's just not going to get that triple infusion to really add that flavor back. And it's really tough to get that flavor. Like I tell everybody, if you can make a brandy and you can take a drink of it and you can tell what fruit made that brandy, then you've made a successful brandy because you've carried that fruit flavor forward. It's not just going to be the smack you down flavor. I know a lot of people will add peach schnapps to their final product to get that peach flavor and kind of cheat a little bit. Or people will add a little peach, syrup or something, when they're done to kind of, give it that flavor. If you don't mind having something infused at when you're done, that works great too. I mean, if your goal is to have something with alcohol and a lot of flavor, then why not post flavor? I mean, it's not about, and it can still be 100 proof. So if you start at 130 proof and you add some peach concentrate, you can still be at 100 proof with some really strong peach, and have 100 proof liquor. And it makes a good tasting brandy. A lot of commercial brandies have post flavorings. I've tasted several of them. I mean, I know some of them used this right here in their post product. Olive Nation peach concentrate. I used it in mine, and I tried to do it. I didn't post flavor with it. I did the pre flavor, and it even didn't carry through well at all. But in post, it will carry through. It gives it a kind of a weird sweetness. I don't like that. Olive Nation has some better. Other stuff is better. I tried that for the first time, and I really didn't like it. The Tyranny peach and the what's the other one? Tarani and the starts with an M. I can't think of it, but there's a couple of different ones out there that what's the name of that? It's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, there's a lot of flavor concentrates like Tarani out there, Monin, that that will give you a pretty good flavor. That Olive Nation wasn't the best. Some people kind of like it. I've had peach brandies that I know was post flavored with that Olive Nation because it has that exact same taste. So if you don't mind the post flavoring, if you just want 100 proof liquor with a good strong peach flavor, that's fine. But if it's like a competition or something where you can't do anything, then you're going to have to use like a 2 or 3 jar rig to get that reinfuse flavor, and it'll really help bring it out. Now, when you do that, you need a 3-jar rig with a bypass. And if you have it in your, if you're just using a thumper, it would be great to have the bypass that I came up with years ago that everybody uses now. And what you do with that is you open up the bypass, you bypass your thumper, and get through your 4 shots and heads, right? Because you've got all that flavor in your thumper, all that peach concentrate or peaches pureed up in there with a little bit of sugar and syrup, maybe peach syrup from a can, which works well. You got all that in your thumper. You don't want to be sending 4s and heads through there and all that acetone start to get in your flavor because it will smear throughout the rest of your run. That peach puree and all that will hold that acetone and all those congeners. It's not good. So that's why I came up with the bypass. So you can bypass all the 4s and heads. When you get past the heads, you can close that bypass off, open it up, and go through the thumper where you have your infusions. Now, the thing about a thumper is if it's properly sized, it's going to be about a third the size of your steel, which means there's going to be a lot of flavor infusers in there, right? That's why the little jar rigs are better because you can just change them out and they have a bypass. You can bypass it while you're changing out a jar, screw another jar in, and with your grill gloves on, right? And then open it back up and go through it and bubble and change each of them out as you go. That works well. If you have a small thumper and you have a drain on it, that works pretty much as an infuser. And you if you have a port on the top of it that you can pour this in, new infusion, and drain the old out, close it, pour the new in, open it up, and then run that. Get a few quarts out of that, close it, bypass, dump it, add some more infusion, open up the bypass, run a few more quarts. That's a really good way to carry that flavor. But it is tough, because the distillation process does remove those flavors. And it's really tough, especially if you have a fruit that's very light and delicate to start with. But going a little bit slower, going with a fast drip as opposed. Did you say how big your steel was? Because it does depend on steel size too. How fast your drip's going to be and whether it's a pencil lead or a fast drip. If you're 10 gallons or less, just a fast a drip as you can get was fine. Maybe even a fine as stream as you can get without it being just past a drip, right? Barely past a drip. You can kind of practice on your sinks and you can see drip, 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 stream, back off, and just get the finest and fine. But if you got like a 20 or 30 gallon steel, you can get a pencil size. That's not going to be a problem. 20 plus 18 and a half ever be fine with a small stream. Um, and that works fine. But when you're stripping, you can go faster and get it all off, and then go a little bit slower on your finishing runs. So I hope I help answer some of your questions. All right. Yeah, I look forward to trying it, brother. But yeah, using the 3-jar rig are essentials, and it don't have to be jars. I think I'm trying for years. I've tried to talk everybody instead of using jars, just use 3 small copper chambers, and it doesn't even have to be copper. It could be stainless, but it's hard to weld stainless and make your own. But 3 half-gallon copper vessels with a little port on the top to add your puree or your fruit infusion, the syrups, whatever you want to use, and a drain on the bottom, and have like 3 little mini thumpers and a bypass would be awesome. That way you don't have to worry about the glass breaking. You don't have to worry about unscrewing them while they're hot and getting the grill gloves on. You can just open the valve, drain it, close the valve, open the port, pour in new fresh, close the valve, and open the bypass up, and you can have all 3 of them refreshed and ready to go. That's really the best way to do it. So I'm trying for years. I think Phil might make them now. And I've seen some other people make them. But yeah, if you could get some small copper infusers, that's going to be a lot better and a lot safer than using the jars. But the jars work well and they're inexpensive. So if you can be careful with them and use a good canning type jar that's not going to just break from heat. But I will say, have other jars ready. Don't try to pour your puree into that hot jar when you unscrew it, because it's just going to break the jar and you're going to be standing there, oh shit, I don't have a replacement jar. So have other jars that are ready, that are cool with whatever with your infusion. Put it up there, it'll heat up naturally, it'll be fine. I'll be there, brother. I'll definitely be there. fresh white corn and cracked yellow corn mash. Awesome. Now, I will say, get you some cream corn and save you a little bit of fresh white corn, grind it up, and you can put cob in there too if you want to. But grind it up, and you want it fine, right? You don't want anything clogging up your lines in your thumper. That's a big danger too. But put some cream corn in there, grind, blend that up in a blender. Man, you'll really like the flavor that comes out because it'll infuse that corn flavor for you, man. It'll be some of the best corn liquor you ever made. Yeah, that's perfect. That's basically like an airlock. If you just as long as it can burp out, any of the buildups and it'll vacate the oxygen for you. But keeping oxygen, deprived environment helps prevent a lot of the bacterias and molds and stuff from growing because a lot of it requires oxygen and it won't grow in an acidic CO2 environment. It won't grow. So if you have a pH of 4.5 to 5.3 range, it's going to be slightly acidic enough to discourage a lot of bacterial starts. And if it has a lot of CO2, it's going to discourage a lot of bacterial growth as well because it needs oxygen. And first and foremost, it needs that oxygen, and it doesn't like that acidic environment. So if it gets above 7 pH wise and gets a lot of oxygen, then you're encouraging bacteria actually. What's going on, Spencer? Good to see you, brother. Here's Mr. Frank. What's going on, bro? Trying to do the malted thing, right? Seems like a challenge. It is a challenge, but it does add good flavor, and there is some benefit to it, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Hey, anytime, brother. Anytime. And I love your questions. I love questions like that because we don't get a lot of those questions, and I know a lot of other people are listening, and they'll get a benefit from your questions. So I appreciate all the questions we can get. But yeah, that little squirrel cage, man, I'm definitely going to try that. It was awesome to see it working, man. I thought, man, what a great idea. I've been putting mine on these little screens for 2x4s, and screen. Actually, my mom when she was living, she lived at an assisted living place, and she had this balcony, right, and she had a cat in the second floor, and she's worried to death about that cat jumping out, and she wanted to be able to let the cat go out there. So she said, well, I screen it. And I talked to people, they're like, yeah, but you can't just put screen up. And I'm like, well, can I just build frames and put screen up, and they said, yeah, that'll be fine, as long as it's something that can be removed when your mom leaves. And I said, okay, so I put one up, and then next thing you know, all our neighbors, can you screen ours? And I did a few of them, and then all of a sudden the people are like, okay, no more screens. The owners don't like the looks of it. They're saying it makes it look a little cluttered. Some have it, some don't. I'm like, I can put it on all of them, and I'm thinking money, right? Because I was making good money putting those up. And so they let me leave the ones that were up. And then on a couple of occasions, the people that had them moved out and they wanted me to remove them. And those became my malting screens, and they worked real well for that. Good story behind it, though. And I ended up having to take my mom's down when she passed away as well. Not so good. But yeah, it was, that's how I got my screens. Smells so good you don't want to drink it. I've never smelled something that good. Just makes me want to drink it more, man. Proofed it down 120 to smoother than the 110. Yeah. Awesome, bro. Zombievers. All right. It's like zombie beavers. Oh, that's great. You need to send that to me. You had me scratching my head, man. I'm thinking distilling. What the hell is a zombie beaver? Is this some kind of bacteria or something? Oh man, you had my mind going a totally different direction. Yeah, give him a message, man. He'd love hearing from you, brother. All right, Drew, you got me scrolling back. 2 inch, awesome, perfect. Yeah, if it's 2 inch, you can put the mesh inside your 2 inch. Just don't pack it real tight. Don't roll it like a joint or something real tight. Just loosely roll it to let the vapors go through it, and the vapors will remove those sulfides and stuff, and you'll lose that sulfurous flavor that you don't want, especially in some of your brandies. It carries forward in a lot of brandies, but it carries forward in some grains too. It also can be a byproduct of a stress yeast building up some of those hydrogen sulfide flavors. So definitely helps, and it's not expensive. But just make sure that you get 100% pure copper. Don't get none of this plated steel shit because it can ruin a distillation. Trust me, learn the hard way. That shit is nasty. It gets black. It gets particles come off. It's just no bueno at all. But they should advertise 100% pure. And look, in like on Amazon, I know some that advertise 100% pure copper ain't. And if you look in some of the comments that people make, they'll say, this is not, a magnet shouldn't stick to copper, or it ruined my distillation, or this is not pure copper. And they should take them off there, and you should complain. If you do get some that magnet sticks to, call Amazon and let them know this is fraudulent. This company's being fraudulent. But it's not real expensive, and you can reuse them. They'll get black. Sometimes they'll turn a little green, get that oxide on them. Put it in some citric acid, some vinegar, whatever. Let it sit for a little bit. Take it out, rinse it, and it'll clean that green up. It will. And after a while, it might just get really, really green and oxidized heavy, and it just can't get it out anymore. Pitch it, recycle it, whatever, and use some new. But it's it's a little bit cheaper than going with a big, huge $2,000 or $3,000 copper rig. And you do get a little bit of the benefit of what some of that copper can bring, and that's removing sulfides. That's one of its benefits, one of its major benefits. One of the big drawbacks too is the oxides and cleaning and keeping them clean. But they heat really well. They heat very evenly. Definitely the best to run with if you can afford it and you don't mind the maintenance, for sure. But if you don't want all that and you still want to remove sulfides, even if you have copper steel, using that copper mesh helps a lot. There it is. I might go a little slow. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. I am feeling better. My doctor told me to slow down a little bit. Yeah, not in the best health, but 15-gallon. That's better than that West has been. That West is hot stuff. It's 140, not hot because it's 140 proof. 15, yeah, you can run it as fine stream, a keg and, those 18 and a half bevers, keg and bevers, you can run that fine stream, no problem at all. And on a finishing run, if you want to do a pencil lead or bigger when you strip, that'd be fine, but just be careful not to scorch. What's going on, Stephen? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people, if they've never done it, they don't know, right? And there's a lot of people that profess to know a lot and have never run the first time in your life. You'd be surprised how many people get in some of these groups and they'll see somebody's question, they'll jump on Google and Google it and try to find an answer. And that's okay. If as long as they're giving good answers, that's kind of okay, I guess, and they act like a professor and they give all the answers, and that's good if they're giving the right answers. But a lot of times, other people they'll hear somebody else say something that may be wrong because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and then they just pass on the wrong information because they don't have the experience to know that that's the wrong information. But yeah, the distillation process removes a lot of impurities. You could take salt water and distill it and get most of the salt out. You can double distill it and make it drinkable, and you're taking out a lot of minerals and salts, because that's what distillation does. I mean, literally Bear Grylls, you can piss in the pot and distill it. I think Phil did that too. Phil Grillis. Uh, you can piss in the pot, distill it a couple times, and it's just water. You've removed all the impurities out of it, and in a survival situation, that's when these stills that we have may just do more than make liquor, right? They're going to make hand sanitizers. They're going to make charcoal lighter. They make fuel, and they can also make liquor, and they can clean your water. If you got a creek, you worry about giardia and all these other, bacteria and stuff. Boom, you can use the old still and remove all this bad shit and have good water. And that's why it's for preppers and people that are, scouts and people that are trying to be prepared for the worst that hopefully doesn't happen, but might. It's good. If you've got a water municipalities that like Flint, Michigan, and you'd rather get your water from the creek and boil it than drink it out of the tap, you'd probably be better off if you did. And distill your own. There's a lot of places they don't tell you what's in the water. They just sit and let you die like they did in Flint, Michigan. They knew what that shit was in there, but yet they let people drink it for years. So, having that still, it's good for making just liquor. You can tinctures. You can make medicine with it. So there's a lot more benefits to having a still than just making some liquor, right? Yeah, you were definitely right. Dump every other jar. Yeah, that's good. Yep. Yeah, like I say, see, so if you can tell you what fruit that was made from, then you've made a very successful brandy. And it's tough to defeat that distillation process, and you defeated it. That's what we try to do, using concentrates but for me, just make a good liquor and get it to 130 proof, and then just pour in some peach syrup and make a good 100 proof peachy taste. And I don't care anymore. I used to that was a big taboo. And also, when I was growing up, we made shine, and we didn't always make it. Sometimes we'd go to over Town Mountain and buy it. And the dude at Town Mountain would put a half a peach in his peach shine, and he'd put grapes in his grape shine. Of course, everybody knows that he was taking up a lot of space, so he wasn't selling a quart or a pint. It was a little bit less because that fruit takes up a lot of space, but that fruit also absorbed a lot of alcohol, and it was good to eat. But it added that flavor back, and it got accepted. People didn't care. Even then, back in the 70s, people weren't all that uptight. But some people get all but hurt. Oh, you got to do it this way. No, you do it your way. We'll do it our way. Whatever you like is a proper way. There's no the way. It's an opinion. There's no facts about it. So if you prefer it post flavored a little bit, it's sweeter, and you got a little peach coming forward, but hey, I'm just going to add a little peach syrup to it, or add some peach concentrates or some peach schnapps even. I don't think the world's going to end. Just don't try to say, now there's no post in it. Don't try to lie about it. But just say, yeah, I got it down 130, put a little bit of schnapps in there and a little bit of peach syrup, and I think it ended up making it pretty good. It's kind of like a mixed drink, but it's still 100 proof, right? So it's like a straight good solid brandy with some good flavor. Who cares if it came off the drip? It's better if you can do that. But it's tough. I know there's a Lintner's wine company out there that puts out these concentrates. And, I know of some people that infuse with those and the jar rigs and stuff, and those carry forward well, and probably a little less expensive. You get like a gallon for 40, 60 bucks. I know the Monans are like $8 for a little teeny thing. So probably going to be cheaper and probably be a little better to buy one of those if you wanted to, go through that expense. If not, it's a lot cheaper to just buy a cheap can of peaches and pour a little bit of that syrup in it post flavored and just say, yeah, this is my peach brandy. I add a little bit of peach syrup and some peach puree to it and strained it and steeped it and it's got pretty good flavor to it, and yeah, it's good. So people are more accepting now of a post flavored thing than they used to be. So it's not as taboo as it used to be. But there's still a lot of purists out there that hate me now because I said that, and that's okay too. Because at the end of the day, it's if you want to do that, that's fine. You have all stand behind you 100%. Yeah, you do you, and put that out there. And if you can get that good flavor, that makes you a better distiller. But if you can't get that flavor through, and you don't have the triple rigs, and you don't have these, you know, uh, setups designed to do that, and you want that in your drink, then add it to your drink, and don't care what those other people say, because at the end of the day, you made yourself happy, and that's what's most important. So who cares what the naysayers say? The haters gonna hate. They're gonna say shit regardless of what you do. So just you be you, and don't worry about what other people say. I quit worrying about what other people say, because it's beyond my control, and they're gonna hate anyway. People just haters gonna hate. No, it'll heat up. It'll heat up. Yeah, that steam going through there, it'll heat that up in no time. Yeah, it is, Monty. Uh, Monty's letting the secret out of the bag. Actually, since you mentioned it, Monty, yeah, I got some of the soluble oak. In fact, it's sitting right here in front of me. We're gonna get the guy on that made that. I'm gonna put it in some liquor. I got it yesterday. I'm gonna call him up and try to get him on either this Saturday or the Saturday after the jam. Try to get him on here to. So you heard it first from Monty, but yeah, we're gonna try to get him on here, and I'm gonna put some of this multi-grain. May put it in the Joe Schwistock and Derek Thompson combo there, and see what it does. And I may do 2 half pints, one with, one without, maybe one with some wood, one without, and I can maybe we'll do it after the weekend after the jam. That'll give it a couple of weeks to for the wood to work, and we can kind of do a comparison. But yeah, the soluble oak, from what I've been hearing, new product out. Hate that we didn't get a sneaking in here, but not going to hold it back. But we're going to try it out. Some people, say it's great, and some people say, it's very similar to the wood, and we're going to find out. And supposedly it works really quickly, and gives it a bourbony flavor in just a few days. So if that's the case, it's going to be awesome. And but this is a new product. It's been out about a year now, maybe two. But it's just kind of trickling. I think the beer industry and some of the other people had it, so it's not really. It's just now trickling down to us and the outlaws. But I think for a lot of moonshiners, it'd probably be one of the best markets for it, because if it works well, a lot of people be putting this in their multi grains and their corn liquor. So Monty let the cat out of the bag, but that's all right, man. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So that's something for y'all to think about and read about. And it's a new product on the market. It's probably going to replace the spirals and the wood staves. Definitely not going to replace a barrel. They're not trying to replace a barrel. I don't think. Maybe it is that good. I don't know. I haven't tried it. Haven't smelled it. Haven't done anything with it yet. Just got it yesterday, so we'll see. But yeah, I want to talk to Cal, the guy that owns the company, tomorrow, and maybe we can get him on either this Saturday or Saturday after Maggie. And Saturday after Maggie would work real well, so I could give this time to, both jars time to age a little bit with the wood, and then one with just this stuff in it. So it'll be interesting. Yep, it's Maggie Valley time of year. Oh yeah, let me get those other links out. Bear with me. Appreciate that, man. Won't take me a second, guys. Slow. I think I'm going to have to get Ann on here so she can share some of these. That'll be pretty helpful. She can do it from her PC over there. I never really thought about that until just now. I'm going to have to, that way we can just share them all up front. That'll be nice. Yeah, a few more, we'll be done. Doesn't take too long. I don't like sharing them the new way either, because used to I could literally go on their page and share it, and I could see if they were doing like I know Mark Morgan sometimes does a lot of his own streams and has podcasts going, and I don't want to be rude and add a podcast to their page while they have one going, and I don't get the opportunity to see that, and it takes so long to try to go to each of these pages and do that. So hopefully they don't think I'm rude by doing it. So that's why. If you do, I'm sorry. I just can't. It'd take half hour for me to do it that way, adding the links this way. For the jar thumpers, they make a jar jacket that's an insulator, keeps it right. Or just a lot of people use the grill gloves. I know those are cumbersome, or welding gloves or something like that. But yeah, if that'd be nice. But I think having little copper rigs with a drain, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch drain it out really quickly, close it, open up the infusion port, dump in another 8, 12 ounces, whatever you do, close that port, let her fly. You could even do that on the fly. Yeah, that would be like a little huggy, like a little jar huggy, like put on the can. That'd work out well. Something else to sell, yeah. That's put your logo on there and sell it. Hell yeah. Yeah, Clint's he's got him a little side gig going. He's got his car broke down and he had some major work to do on it, and it's something I don't think he had time to do himself, and so he's taking on a little side gig and working, and actually doing pretty well at it. And I think he's starting to enjoy it and enjoying that second income. So he's doing good. Definitely miss him though. And it's hard for me to keep up without him. I don't always. I don't. Sometimes I'll do a one and done, like a lot of corn liquor. I'll do like a one and done if I'm just going to, infuse that through my thumper with a little bit of or infuser with the corn, cream corn and fresh corn. I'll do that as a one run. Some of my brandies and stuff and grappas, I'll do 2 or 3 runs. I've done a triple run, does well, clarifies things and makes flavors lighter. I will say, brandies run once, and I do sometimes like cognac, so I'll do it 2 ways. Either I'll add the liquor back to the back set and just rerun it again, and that's kind of like a cognac, right? And it builds a lot of flavors, but it's very strong flavors. You don't get a lot of front notes, middle notes, and back notes. It just gives you a strong punch, one flavor. But if I distill it, proof it down with water, distill it, proof it down with water, distill it, I'll get much lighter notes, and you can pick out front, middle, and end notes a little better. It's just not muddied up with that one like a heavy cognac would do. So it just depends on what you're doing and what kind of flavor you're shooting for. You can do it either way. But yeah, I've done a lot of triple runs. It definitely makes it lighter. Not necessarily, it makes it sweeter, lighter. You get more florals, believe it or not, more lighter notes than you would with just running it heavy one and done, lower proof, like a 120, 130 coming right off, and that'll give you a lot of heavier flavors, especially if you run it several times that way on the back set. It could be like a cognac. It'll be a very strong flavor, but you don't always want that. So you can, there's no one way to do it. There's lots of different methods to try and experiment, and you'll eventually, whatever you like best. Some people like that thick, heavy flavor in the one note. They don't want delicate notes. They want that flavor to smack them, and they like that heavy flavor. And they like that heavy flavor put in a barrel and charred and get that barrel flavor and that heavy, and it's just good. And some people prefer a little lighter, instead of a charred barrel, they want it toasted and a lighter flavor. and more delicate notes, and it just depends on what you're shooting for. So there's no right or wrong. It's just different techniques for different preferences, right? And that's something hard for a lot of people, because a lot of people get set in their ways, and this is the way you're supposed to do it. No, it's not. There's many ways there's many a slip, twist, cup, and a drip, and there's many ways to get to that drip, right? So there not one way is the highway, or the highway. It's just there's lots of different ways to arrive at the drip, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just a different way, and each way sometimes has pros and cons, and sometimes people prefer things done another way than the other because they like the taste of it better that way, or it's simpler that way and it's just as good. So there might be a lot of motivations to do it certain ways than the others, but there's no right or wrong. There are certain ways that, 90 out of 100 people or 99 out of 100 people are going to say, yeah, you should have probably done it this way instead of that way. But there's always that one person that likes it that way. And if that's the way they like it, they aren't wrong. They might be outweighed by opinions, but if that's the way they like it, more power to them. But there is sometimes good, better, and best ways. And some people may prefer the good. Some people, more people going to prefer the better, and even more people going to prefer the best way. But there are still three different ways, and to arrive at it. And some people, it's just a lot of extra work, and it's just not, to them, it's not worth it. They can't tell the difference in taste. It's like, I taste it. Both of them taste good, but, I had to work twice as hard for that one. Is it that much better? No. So I'm going to do it this way. It's a lot easier for me. So, and they're not wrong, And that's one of the problems with a lot of people in the group. It's my way or the highway. This is the way to do it. And you'll never hear me say, the way. I may say this might be a better way of doing it or the best way of doing it for me. You might, most people prefer this, but if you don't, and that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. If you're satisfied with it and you like it and all your buddies like it, then who am I to tell you that you're wrong? Yeah, I can't judge your taste buds. That's an opinion. On any clue on what moonshine should I use for a laxative effect? I will say, we talked about this last week. A lot of people don't like the use of glycerins. It smooths your alcohol out tremendously, glycerols and glycerins. But I also told the guy last week that if you do add a lot, if you add too much, it will give you the trots. So if you want to make some moonshine and you want to get the laxative effect, absolutely, make something that tastes good, add a little peach flavor to it, and then add a bunch of glycerin to it, and it'll help you. And I mean, people may laugh, but that's medicine, And if you prefer to have a little bit of a buzz at the same time you're drinking something that's gonna, loosen your bowels as opposed to just drinking some medicine, I'd probably prefer it to be a liquor too, right? So why not? Don't worry about it. If they get emotional, whose problem is that? There's the man. What's going on, brother? We were just talking about you, bro. Yeah, I know. It was, man. It's people just get fighting mad now. They get fighting mad about that now. You ain't making it right. You've been shunned. You're not part of moonshine community. Whatever. Let's pass it around and see who likes it the best, and they'll always like that one that tastes better. And it's different times these days. People just don't give a shit anymore about that off the drip stuff. I just want it to taste good. That's what the comments I get today are. And I have to agree, if you want it to taste good, you want it to be strong, really the only way and the easiest way to get that strong flavor would be just to post flavor it, and save yourself the trouble. And if that's what people prefer, and most of the people prefer, I've been to many contests, and that's what people prefer these days. They just soon have a post flavor. Now, I like to try to get the best, but what I like isn't necessarily what everybody else is like. I'm sometimes that 1 in 100 that likes it done this way. And, I know what it takes to get that and how hard it is to get that. So I can appreciate that. But somebody that doesn't make it, they don't give a fuck. They just want it to taste good. And if it barely tastes like peach, that's not that great. If it tastes like peach syrup and it's got 100 proof bite to it, I like it. And that's what they pick every time. So, it's sometimes if you're making it for bragging rights, make the brandy. But if you're making it to sell or making it to keep people happy, post doesn't matter much anymore. That's right. They don't care. Yeah, we missed you, brother. But we understand. Man, it's got to make that money. And Saturday nights is a big night. Tuesday night, yeah, we can see him a little bit more on Tuesday nights. But I know Saturdays he's swamped, so it's tough for him. And we understand. Got to make that money and get your car fixed and get things settled out. Having a little extra money is always good. But we sure miss you, brother. So anytime you can jump in here, we appreciate it. Yeah, they have gone up. I'm glad I bought a bunch, man. I got stacks of jars. And I'll tell you, if you know anybody that works at a restaurant that serves a lot of wine or a liquor store or bars that go through a lot of liquor bottles, those are great to store liquor in. Might be another law you're breaking, I guess, if you put it in a liquor bottle with a label on it. But, if you put it in a Tito's and it's clear, looks like Tito's, right? That's an extra charge, maybe, but it's going to be hard for them to say, right? But wine bottles, and you can get corks pretty cheap on Amazon, and I got a bunch of wine bottles. I make wine, and I'll also store liquor in them and put a big cork in it, and yeah, it works great. So you don't always have to have those expensive jars, and you can get those free. I've got a restaurant that I go to, and it's got a bar and a restaurant combo, and they sell a lot of wine. And the gals there, I give them some of my strawberry champagne, and they give me shitloads of, they say wine bottles for me. They give them to me at the cases and cases at a time. I got stacks of them in there, and yeah, it's great for holding my wine. Of course, I do make a lot of wines. And I age it in those bottles. I'll secondary ferment and I'll do long term aging in the bottle. But that's the cheap way, brother. Or stainless. You can get kegs and clean them out, and and store them in kegs. Stainless is a good storage vessel. A lot of wine companies will store wine in stainless. On the soluble oak, yeah, it's we're going to get him on and talk to him, and I'm gonna have Phil on, and we're gonna get the owner of the company, on. We're gonna do a review on it, and I'm gonna sample the oaked versus the soluble oak, and give an honest opinion. But from what I hear, it's pretty good stuff. Bad Mo's or hillbillies or I guess Wes's, San Mo. I call him Sandman. He's San Mo. Yeah, all those barrels work great, but nothing replaces the all wood barrel. So you can get the all wood 5 gallons in. Well, the way it is, the Bad Mo's, it's stainless steel all the way around, which is a great vessel to store in, and it's got the wood on the front, and it replicates the time of a 53. So it takes years in a Bad Mo, right? Or a San Mo or Hillbilly. All of them take years because you only have your liquor exposed to X amount of surface area of the charred wood. Whereas a barrel, all 4 sides, front, back, all the way around. I guess that's 3 sides since it's round, front, bottom, top, bottom, and that's all the side. But so it has a lot more contact, so it takes a lot less time. So if you could get a 5 gallon barrel, 6-8 months is close to equivalent of a big 53 for 4 years. Still not going to give you that character that big 53 will in 4 years in a 5 for 6 to 8 months, whatever. A 15 is kind of a good in between. It takes a year and a half, and you can get good flavors in a 15-gallon barrel. I've got 15s, I got 5s. But the 53s for 4 years or plus is really going to be the best. Now, the Badmo, Sammo, Hillbilly Glass barrels equivalent that longer term. So it's gonna take a couple few years in those to get the equivalent of that big barrel for 4 years, right? All great alternatives and great ways to store it for sure. What's going on, John? Good to see you, brother. I know I'm doing good. And I've been pretty long winded, and we've had some good questions. Corn and brandy, yeah, I like my corn. I love corn liquor, and I love multi-grain liquors. But I've done that some my whole life, and I've been getting into wines the last 10 years, and brandies in the last 4, 5, 6 years. I've been doing a lot more brandies than grain. Um, but I need to. I'm getting low on the grain, so I need to. Now I got the big barrels. I'm gonna have to put my corn to the grindstone, literally, and get some done. Yeah, and it helps hold in the heat too, and not only just to touch it and get it off there, it'll help hold the heat in, so it works more efficiently. Yep, good point. Yeah, that's a fact. Always something happens, but we just got to learn from our mistake, and that's the thing about distilling is there's a lot of little things, and little things can make little differences. So you make these changes, it makes a little bit of difference. It's notable, but not major. But as you learn to fix a lot of these little things, they can add up to major things, and it can make a major difference. So, educating and learning from your mistakes, and improving each time, strive to make it better each time, and learn from, your failures, and trying to eliminate those failures. What do I need to eliminate that failure? What can I do next time that I won't run into that problem? Which I learned the hard way through mistakes. So I persevered by doing that exactly. What went wrong? How come this happened? I didn't have a hydrometer. I didn't know to use pH paper. When I had problems, I did what most people do that don't know. I had more yeast, and it would if I didn't realize it, but I was just ruining it by adding more yeast instead of just correcting the pH or adjusting the temperature, or doing little things like that. I could have changed it, or getting a better starting gravity to start with, so I didn't have such a light alcohol. It's just you learn from mistakes, and you learn to correct each of these mistakes, and the more you learn, the more you can fine tune, and it really makes a big difference when you can eliminate a lot of little things, right? Yeah, they did. And we were talking right before you got on here, Clint, with, fellow was on here talking about malting his own corn. And I was talking about back in the day, what a pain in the ass it was to malt your own corn, to cook that corn, to try to gelatinize it at low temperatures, to take advantage of the malt. And even then, gelatinizing it at a low temperature like that, you don't get near the gelatinization, completion and efficiency you do with the high temps, because you got to preserve that alpha and beta amylase in that malted corn. So, you're trying to malt, gelatinize it at 150, 55 degrees, and slow cooking it for long, long periods. And it doesn't convert well that way. It really doesn't. So it was a long, arduous task. Even using malt, that's kind of, 10 years from now, that's going to be people like, oh, you used malted barley? Wow. We just use liquid enzymes, right? Because it's so much easier. But I think some flavor is going to be lost. I think when malting corn became a thing in the past, some goodness and flavors were lost as a result. And I think, in the future, as people rely more and more, I need to drink, get that frog out my throat, rely more and more on the exogenous enzymes, we're going to, see less malt being used. And I think that's going to have an impact on flavor as well. So hopefully people just kind of use a little bit of both, and maintain that flavor, and it helped a lot. But nothing's wrong with just corn with enzymes. I'm not saying that at all. But once you taste that malted barley and get used to that malted and that sweetness from malted wheat, it's good, right? And you want to get a little bit of that in there, but you can use a little bit of that liquid enzyme too to increase the efficiency. That way, you're not as worried about temperatures anymore. I don't care if all the the enzymes in that malt works or not. I want the flavor of that malt, right? So, and we can use 2-row, and we use 10%. We don't have to have 20 or 25 of the 2-row or 20 of the 6-row, or 20 or 15 of the malted wheat. Now we can just use whatever percentage we want and use those exogenous enzymes to get us, a good conversion, but we can still get the benefit of those malted grain flavors, right? So I think a little bit of both, helps for sure. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, we did. It was a lot different. It was totally different than what it's done today. Like I said, the ones that malted corn, long, arduous. Most moonshiners got lazy, when they figured out they could use cornmeal and sugar and satisfy most palates and run it properly and not make it hot. That became a pretty popular way of doing it because it was so easy and so efficient. Just do it that way, run it a couple times and you're done, and people like it. And as long as you can make that buck, that's really what mattered. The typical moonshiner was trying to support a family. They wasn't craft distillers and all. Some were very conscious about their quality of their product and very proud, but a lot of them, they just wanted to get that liquor out there and get it sold. And a lot of their customers that bought it really weren't top shelf liquor buyers. They just wanted to, get that cheap jar of shine. And, dry counties, like I grew up in, you couldn't buy illegal alcohol. You had to get shine or drive to a wet county. So that really boosted the sales as well. But so not all shiners were, conscious about quality. That's why they were using oil drums and cast iron radiators. They didn't care. They didn't care if the health of the people that were drinking it. They want to make that money, and they didn't care what kind of steel they put it in. And a lot of them, they didn't know. I'm not saying they intentionally did it. A lot of them had no clue that it was going to hurt people by doing that. Yeah, I didn't want to tell you that he's on OnlyFans. He's on fans only, man. They're making new stone jugs. So, there's a lot of reproductions out there that are probably as good or better than the old ones for storing. And it's another good vessel to store in. A little bit porous, not the best, but still don't store in milk jugs and plastics. That's one thing we don't want to store in. A lot of people say, well, I looked on the charts and ethanol does not break down PET or HDPE or LDPE. So I'm going to store it in LDP. Well, that's fine. If you have pure ethanol, 99% pure ethanol, that's perfectly fine. And you can absolutely, you can store that 198 proof, vodka in any plastic, not any plastic, but in those PET or HDPLE, polyethylene or HDLP and low density polyethylene. You can do it. You can do it in any of those. But what happens is once you get some of your acetone in there and acetyls, then you're going to have to worry, because look what acetone does to some of those. It has a C rating, right? So it will eat away at those plastics and you get microplastics off. So yeah, if you have pure ethanol, it's perfectly fine to store in a lot of those plastics. But if you've got acetone and heads, a little bit of heads in there, which we know it's present in pretty much all of it throughout the run, then you're going to get some, microplastics. And that's a big problem. We're finding out more and more health wise that's hurting a lot of livers. That shit, it's inert. Your bodies don't get rid of it. The acids in your stomach don't get rid of it. Your body can't wash it, flush it through. in your body filters this stuff and it gets trapped, and it's not good. So plastic's fine for a very short period, but never long term storage. Um, and I'm not a big fan of plastic liquor bottles. I don't you not see one on my shelf. I don't do that. I don't do plastics. I've always been wary, but the more I learn about the microplastics, it is something to be concerned about, especially when you got stuff with heads in it. We know a lot of the modern liquors, it's got some heads. So think about that and buy your glass. Buy glass. Or keep it in stainless or a barrel. Best way to store it. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. Especially when get a few people in the community that don't like you, and next thing you know, they start talking rumors and starting shit, and especially in small towns, it's tough, man. Just laying pipe at night. He's a gigolo. I told you he's on that OnlyFans, or is it Grinder? I think he's on that Grinder, maybe. Oh, that's funny shit out there. A lot of people don't know what Grinder is. Some of my friends are streamers and stuff, and we kid each other a lot. And it's a gay site, right? With nothing wrong with that, but we kid. Yeah, is it humid out there? It's been pretty humid here. Nobody in South Carolina chimed in though. Did South Carolina get some rain this past few days? I know they got a drought, and I'm hoping. I saw some clouds that went through here go that way, so I was hoping they'd get some. Hopefully they did. Yeah, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Louisiana swamp. Man, that's some of the most humid areas. Florida's not so bad, but you get the Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana belt right there. It's wet, it's humid, it gets bad here in Kentucky because we got more running water than any state in the nation in the continental U.S. So we get our humidity too, but those can match or surpass. This has people been to Fort Benning and some of those basic trainings down there, and yeah, they can tell you how bad it gets, man. That humidity's bad. But yeah, it's pretty tough down there. Makes them get emotional. Well, that just may be what they do when they drink. You made some of that crying shine, didn't you? Popcorn always said the fighting kind, the loving kind. Well, you made that crying kind. That's the third kind. There's loving kind, there's fighting kind, and then there's the crying kind. So you was making that crying liquor. What's going on, Mash Brothers? Good to see you, man. Yeah, I mean it was crazy, buddy. It was so long and arduous, and it's easy to see why people took the shortcuts though. Yeah, but those old timers, man, they just put the nose to the grindstone. They didn't care to go 2 days, and cook the shit out of it for a long, long time slow. And women get involved. That a lot of times it was a whole family thing. The women were cooking, the guys would mash it in and distill it, and it was tough, man. These liquid enzymes, my God, imagine we wouldn't have the good quality, that we had back then for the ones that did take the time to do those things. But yeah, it's different times now. Yeah, it will. And that's why I worry, because people are going to depend less on malts, but hopefully they still include them for flavor. Uh, Two thumpers to get higher proof. to increase the proof. Like I was talking earlier, John, when we made it like with the malted corn, we'd get like 1040 gravity if we were lucky. 1050 was awesome. And we didn't have the hydrometer, but I'm just saying that would be probably the equivalent to the best we could do. And when you'd run it, it would come out at like 80, 90 proof, and it would come out real high because you start with such low proof regardless. Maybe if you had a big column, you could have got more, but on a big pot still, 80 to 110, 20, that's the best she's getting. And it come out muddy flavored, so having the second thumper, would give it that second distillation, right? You got you're redistilling your first thumper and then it distills over again. So you got a more refined product and you only had to run it one time through. Whereas before you'd have to run it, dump it back in, run it again, and, proof it down, run it again. And that's why you see the 3X's on the jars. That's how many times they usually had to run it back then to get it to that higher proof, which is, typically the shine was, 120, 130 proof, and it was stronger than the other. And people felt they were getting more value out of it because it took less to make that mixed drink. But it was just to increase efficiency and they didn't have to run it. So if you didn't have to run it twice, then you could be running that second mash all the way through that, right? And doubling your production in the same amount of time. So it made good economic sense. Yeah, man, I got the belt many times. Remember, I used to have to go out and pick a switch, and I go out there and find a little rotten branch. They'd swing it, and they'd break in their hand, and they'd come back with a good willow and light me up on the back of the legs, man, where it hurts the most. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Yeah. And that, if you have that, you can kind of bypass, get rid of needing the bypass. So you could just run it through once you got to your heart, kind of slow it down, drain your thumper, cut it off, and then let it build back up again. It will have to reheat a little bit again, but yeah, it'll work fine. Absolutely. But I noticed I was always getting smearing, and I called it blending because we didn't know the terminology that was used. We called it blending, but we could tell that it was getting heads when we used the thumper all the way through the run. I could taste those heads all the way through that acetone, and I didn't like it. And I'm like, it's we make better liquor without the thumper, and it's like, yeah, and it's like, well, the heads are coming off first, so let's just put a bypass on this thing and let's bypass all those heads to the condenser. And then when we get to the hearts, we can run that through the thumper. And that was my eureka moment. I guess 82 or 3 when I came up with that. And man, it made a huge difference. No more smearing, blending, and it was a lot better. So that's another one of the little stumbling blocks and learning experiences because I tried to learn each time, and that was one of my learning experiences. And I was really glad that I could share that with the community. And now everybody and their mothers using the bypass, and that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, and it's just word of mouth corruption and gossip and henning. A lot of we always called it henning. All these people passing along the gossip. Usually the women on the phone. Myrtle, did you hear about? The next thing you know, everybody in the town is talking about it. You got a bunch of hens henning. But Lord, I see a lot of guys henning these days, man. It's like, wow, I'm a little old school and old fashioned when it comes to that. I don't do a lot of gossiping and stuff. And I'm a little blunt and straightforward, and that sometimes works against me too because I usually just speak my mind, tell people what I'm thinking. And it can be a good thing or a bad thing, but I see as honest and straightforward. Some people just call that asshole. But that's just the way it is. Some people say, you're just being an asshole. I'm considering it just being honest and straightforward. That's just the way I've always been. And yeah, it won't fall apart, but you'll get microplastics and just little, atoms. I'm talking about molecules coming off at a time. I'm not talking about, layers. I mean, it's just atoms and really just those little molecules of plastic and stuff come off, years ago. I remember probably in the 90s, early 2000s, a lot of gas stations would keep these 2 liter jugs of pop outside and they'd get hot in the heat, in the sunlight. And it was causing some of that to break down and get into the pops and creating a microplastic issue as well. So that's why you don't see them stacked up outside like that anymore. And if you do, don't buy them. Yep, that's the whining shine. Yep, yeah, you can make some of that crying shine. There's loving kind, fighting kind, and the crying kind. That's an old popcorn man. He's a character. And prayers going out to Saul's family. Saul just passed away this past week. Very sad. He was a hell of a guy, man. Anybody knew him, loved him, and had a unique laugh. If he was in a room laughing, you definitely knew it. And great guy, awesome guy, man. Gonna miss him. That's going to make Maggie really somber this year, for sure. But he'll be sorely missed. There is a what do they call those, charitable thing for his wife and his son. I can't think of the name of what they call them. Let me Google that. Getting old, can't remember things. Yeah, GoFundMe. Thank you, babe. There's GoFundMe's out there for it. Well, there's one good one, the original. I think it's posted in the militia page. So if you want to help his wife and little boy out, they could definitely need it. He was the breadwinner of the family, and all of a sudden he's gone, and it's tough when that happens. Prayers going up for him, though, for sure. Did get some rain? Good. Not what you needed. Yeah. I know the all way North and South Carolina's in a drought. We've been getting a lot of rain here. I've only had to water my veggies a few times. That's just to get some fertilizer on them. They actually were a little too soggy at first and stunted their growth some. But it's spacing out a little better. We're getting a couple days of dry and wet rain, and we've had plenty. We had flooding. It's kind of funny. We'll pipe gas and natural gas, and we'll pipe oil all over the country to refineries to make it cheaper. But we don't pipe water all over. Look how much California would benefit from getting a lot of water from some of these rivers that flood, and some of these areas that flood could share some of that water and have reservoirs, need more reservoirs across America to store water. That's, through some major droughts, that would be our livelihood. I know they depend on Lake Mead a lot, and it's been drying up because it's been pumped out of and depended on so much. And, Colorado River and a lot of these rivers have been sucked out and getting sucked dry. So, yeah, thinking maybe in the future we're going to have some big water lines run across country to help, take some water from the flooded areas and put it where it's needed. Mississippi River, use that as a source for a lot of it would be good too. Well, some people just get that way when they're drinking, and it depends on the mood. Alcohol is a mood enhancer. So if you're feeling good when you drink it, it'll just make you feel even better. But if you're depressed when you drink it, sometimes it even makes you more depressed. So it's probably not a good thing to turn to when you're down, for sure. I love it. I'll use them. I got some right here. I put on Kleenexes. Well, I'll show you. I keep some here in a contact. It says glass cleaner, and it's a contact. It's plastic, so I damn sure wouldn't drink it. But it is kind of how I discovered how some of these heads. I let some sit in this thing I filled it up, and I use it to clean my reading glasses. Right, So I'm just using little teeny squirts at a time. So it'll be in this thing for 8 months to a year. And last time they got about almost to the bottom, and it was a year. And they started smelling good. And I was like, man, those don't smell like acetone anymore, man. I'm getting a lot of floral and good smells. Even now, this one, this is not that old, but even this one, I can smell a change from when it was new. And that's esterification. So sometimes when you hear us talk about aging, sometimes people will include a little bit of the heads, especially if you can get that cut that has high esters, and use those to mix with some acids and some of the oils that you get in your tails and some of the acids that you get in it, organic acids, natural, and they'll esterify. So you get some of these esters mixed with acids will create esterification. And it's a molecular change. And when these molecules change, they're changing form. So, you can take like sodium, something that's completely toxic, slightly change it with adding some chloride and make salt that's perfectly fine. So you can go from something sodium that's radioactive and can kill you easily and very extremely toxic. Sodium is extremely toxic, a sodium element, very toxic, and radioactive, can kill you bad. And get chlorine in there properly, right? Then it just salt, sodium chloride. So the esterification process is the same. So you get these heads that are shitty acetone and esters, and you mix it with the acids, and these molecules change, and they make some polyphenols, phenols, and flavonoids, and other delicate notes and flavors that actually taste good. So that's part of the maturation process. And wines go through the same process as well. That's why, over time, some wines taste better. Now, like fruit wines, they'll be good up to a year, 2, 3. But after that, some fruits trail off. They don't get good anymore. They actually go bad. Whereas grapes and certain other fruits will improve over time. And over longer periods of time, they even get better and better. So like some of these 1963 Rothschilds or some of these, really, great bottles of wine that are aged. It's like, they're just super fantastic tasting to these wine connoisseurs because they've gone through this esterification process for so long, and it just keeps getting better and better and better, and it's just like a sensory overload for these wine connoisseurs because it just tastes so good, but they're willing to pay thousands of dollars for the bottles of it. Me, it's a little crazy that they do that, but to each their own. But that's the process, and that's why when you talk about aging is one process. Maturation is another. Esterification is a maturation. You can do it in a jar, and a lot of these wines do it inside a bottle. A lot of your moonshine can do it in a jar. If you put shine up on a jar, it tastes okay. Put it up on a jar. Oh, I forgot about that, man. It was in the back. Oh, I forgot about that up on that shelf. Hell, that's been there for a year. And you take a drink, you're like, damn, that's good. I don't remember it being that good. It wasn't. It got better. So, maturation and aging, like aging on oak and wood. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the soluble oak thing in a few weeks. So maturation and aging, two different things, but together, yeah, and that's what happens in a barrel. You get the esterification and the aging with the oak and the tannins and a lot of the natural flavors from the wood going along with this esterification process. And it's what makes some of your bourbons and everything so much better than just a white dog, But yeah, there's lots of good things you can do with those heads. You can, if you're making a white dog, you don't want the heads in it, and you don't want the high heads anyway. And you definitely don't want 4 shots. So the 4 shots and the high heads, I don't keep for shit. I use it for cleaners. I'll use it to light charcoal. I'll use it to make hand sanitizer. I use it to make glasses cleaners. You can clean your metal if you're doing welding. You can clean all the oils and stuff off there. You can clean your steels with it. It's fine for cleaning up stuff. Perfectly fine. It evaporates. It goes away. It's not going to give you any more heads or badness or bad juju. It's fine. It evaporates away. So it's good for cleaning just about everything. Glass top ovens. It's great for stoves. Clean that glass top, helps cut a lot of that. Great for countertops. It's probably for your granite and stuff. It's probably not that good for like granite and those type countertops because a lot of times those rely on some oils to keep it, the porosity down and keep them from staining easily. And I think this would probably strip a lot of that. So it's probably best to use some of the cleaners designed for those, but for, glass tops and cleaning windows and, cleaning the windows on your car, fine. I wouldn't get it on my paint, right? Paint thinners, good for that. There's a lot of good uses for it. Yeah, it's not good in any milk jug. I mean, whether it makes it brittle enough to break or not, having it outside will do that too. And in the sunlight, makes them break down. I got watering jugs. So, I got these big, these kitty litter jugs. Those are 2.5 gallons. So I use them, I rinse them out. It's just cat litter, right? And I rinse them out and I use it to mix my plant food in. I got 3 or 4 of those jugs. Some of them set outside all winter. And man, those things are brittle as fuck, man. They'll break down. So yeah, it's just not good to store in plastic, period. Really isn't. Because it has those heads and other, compounds in there aside from just acetone, ethyl acetate being one of them. And there's others that will break that plastic down. So don't use jugs. Trust me, bro. It's just not good. Actually, when I was younger, when I was probably 15, 16, this would be late 70s, late 70s, they had some public service announcements for moonshiners in our area because we had a lot of moonshine coming from our areas. And they were talking about how some of the plastics were breaking down from people storing that in the milk jugs. And it was a health concern. So it's been known for a long, long time. But yeah, a lot of people said they were just saying that to scare people out of, making moonshine or having moonshine and all that. We just put it in jars, it just ran the costs up a little bit. So they end up putting it in jars. But if you put it in a jug and you're just going from the still to the house and you're going to dump it into a big vessel and stir it up, mix it up, and put it in glass jars, that's one thing. But long-term storage, absolutely not. Don't do it. Yeah. And like I say, transportation, it's not so bad because it's just in there for a day, a few hours. So, it's just a good way to transport it with a handle, light, just a gallon at a time. Even buckets, same thing. So, that's okay for a very short period, but just not long term storage, right? So, once you get it home, most of them would put it in that big 10, 20 gallon stainless pot that they boiled water in and proof it, blend it, and proof it down, make their blends if they want to take some old stuff and put in there and kind of work out a blend, and then they'd proof it and then jar it up from there. That's fine, but just no long term storage like that. What's going on, Junkyard? It's good to see you, brother. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's fine for short periods. Just don't do long term. Absolutely do not. And it's got acetone, it's got ethyl acetate. And look, you can pull up your material science pages. There's a lot of actually I've got one that I used to go to. I've got it saved on my OPC over here. But that's how I did my research on it. And that's how I found out that well, ethanol is perfectly fine. And then I started looking, I'm like, well, what's in this? Okay, well, we got more than just ethanol in here, right? Unless it's pure. So we got ethyl acetates, we got acetone. Let's find those on. Oh, that's not an A rating. That's a C rating. That means that you are getting some dissolving. It's not going to dissolve it like acid would on, a basic. It's not just going to eat it away immediately. But a C rating means that it's slowly eating away at that. Then it's going to do it molecule at a time, but you're getting those molecules in your body, and just trust me, it's just not good. And microplastics is something that's kind of new, and they've known for a while. They've changed some formulations on some of the old jugs and stuff that they had pop in and milk in, so it's not the same as it used to be. but still, microplastics is an issue, and that's just one way to avoid that. I don't like having plastic anything. You know, a lot of people will heat up their food in a microwave in plastic, and that's not good either. So don't do that either. You know, use that glass or that microwave safe ceramic or something, but plastic, don't be that person, because it's hurting you. And we're coming into a plastic world, and you know, there's so much microplastics even in our oceans that are getting into fish and other animals, you know, and that's not good either. So yeah. Right. They let it breathe. And, you know, that I talked about that a while back is a lot of times people think when your distillate comes off the drip, we talk about trying to keep it between 60 and 75 degrees. That's optimum. And people will say, well, if it comes off hotter than 75, like if it comes off at 90, it makes a hot liquor. Well, it's not really making a hot liquor. It's just that when things are a higher temperature like that, the atoms are moving much faster inside there. So as things cool, the atoms move slower and slower until they just get where they don't move at all when it starts freezing, right? So those atoms are moving. And as those atoms are moving, more volatiles are coming off and evaporating off of it, right? So when you drink it, you're smelling those volatiles coming off. You're smelling isopropyls and ethyl acetates, acetones, all these higher, you know, alcohols that are in there. They're coming off, and it just makes it smell and taste hotter, because when you smell, that's part of your taste, right? So when you taste something, if you can get that olfactory thing going too, it can influence the flavor. And that's why it always tastes hotter when you're drinking a hotter distillate like that. But it's technically not hotter once it cools off. It mellows out, and it's like, oh, it's not so bad now that it's cooled off. And reason being, A, is because it's cooler, and B, because a lot of those volatiles have evaporated off. And people leave the jar open, put a little cheesecloth on it. People use coffee filters. That's expensive. You know, just use paper towel. Cheesecloth works best. Lets more through and just keeps the critters and the dust out and the fruit flies and everything out. But it'll help some of those higher alcohols evaporate and help your flavor and make it smoother. If you're aging, you don't have to worry about that, because those things are actually going to estrify and be a benefit. So that's again the difference between, you know, aging or selling as a white dog. Now, the microplastics is not a scam. It's a fact. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. There are microplastics in coming off into your food. It's not good for your system. It's a medical fact. You know that we can deal with opinions on here and all that. A lot of people think everything's a conspiracy. That is not. It is an issue. Well, food safe and alcohol safe. We're talking about acetone and ethyl acetate. We're not talking about food safe. Yes, certain plastics are fine for food until you heat them up in the microwave. Then it's not safe anymore because some of it comes off. We know about the biphenyls, right? We know a lot about certain plastics in the past that we no longer use in formulations for food safe. What thought was food safe wasn't. We also, at one point in time, thought lead was fine too for our pipes until we found out that it wasn't. So as we've learned more about plastics, they've been used for a long time since the DuPonts put them out, and rayons and polyesters and all that. DuPont was one of the biggest producers of them over the years. And some of the first stuff they came out with was toxic as fuck, you know, but we've learned over the time to change the formulations, take, you know, biphenyls out and other things to take out to make them safer. But still, there's certain care that needs to be taken. Yes, it's perfectly good to put mayonnaise in a plastic jar, perfectly fine. But just don't heat it up in the microwave and get some of that plastic melting off into your mayonnaise, right? So it's not designed for high temperatures. It's not designed for microwaving. Some may say it's microwave proof or safe. That just means it won't melt. That doesn't mean that, you know, some of it might not be coming off. Some may not. But yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory. There are actually a lot of plastics that can affect you. And right, it's food safe's one thing, but we're talking about storing it ethyl acetates and acetones, which with most of the plastics, it's not safe. It's not food safe. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to run back to back too when I can finally get this get my column up and run this. I want to run this 4-inch column, so I've been waiting. I've got a potato that's been waiting. It's cheesing up on me, and it's got lacto. That's what we call cheesing up. And so I've got to get my tri clamps so I can get it run, but it's going to be a double run too. Probably a quad run. I'll probably double run it all twice. So that'll be 2 days. Yeah, yeah. I hate to say it's a decent price, but it is a price. Yeah, it's heirloom corns are expensive, but I say more you buy, the cheaper you're going to get it. Call Philbilly, and if especially if you live anywhere in the Ohio area, it can save you a bunch of money by picking it up. It's expensive to ship corn too. That that's a lot of your cost is having to pay. It's and that's why I say too. I don't ever recommend anybody just getting started to start dealing with expensive um, mashes because you're going to fuck up when you're going to mess up when you're just starting, and you don't want to ruin, $300 mash, if 150-gallon mash of 50 pounds of $2, having $100, $200 into your mash with some, nice heirloom corn and some good 2-row and some other malts, maybe some malted wheat or something. Yeah, you can get quite a bit in there. So get up with Philbilly, and especially if you can drive there and buy quantity, you can save a lot of money for sure. A whole bunch. It's worth the trouble if you're close by. And if not, try to find a farmer that has them. Go to your extension office, and it's good for corn. Cornbreads and corn meals. It's not just for shining. So a lot of people love a Jimmy Red cornmeal. Cornbread, Jimmy Red cornbread. It's great. Or a white corn, a good white dip, Cherokee white or something like that makes a great cornbread. So or beer. You can just say you're adding it to your beer. You don't know. I have to say. Right. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, and I did that too because I heard a lot of people, they talk about, oh, I get ethanol coming off at 180, and you won't unless you have a really high proof. You'd have to have at least 100 proof plus to come off at 180. Let me find the chart. So I did the little experiment and I just watched it. That's all it took. So here, let me take this out. And you can see at boiling at 180, you would have to have 45, right, almost 50. So it'd be right at 100 proof. So 98 proof to 100 proof is what it would take to boil off at 180, right? So our mashes are 10, 12%, unless we've proofed down and doing a second run, which should be 40 or less, right? Or 80 proof, 40% I'm talking on this chart. So you're going to get something at about 182, 183 range, right? But that's very concentrated, right? Most mashes, first run, going to be 8, 5, 6, percent to 12% maybe. So it's going to be 195 to to 197, 198-ish, right? Maybe even almost 200 for a 5% wash like a beer. So, you're not going to see anything coming off before that period. Now, you may see some little, like, Clint's talking about. It's like fog on water, and that's cool air touching a hot liquid, and it creates a little fog. You're not boiling it off. That's just fog, smoke on the water. It's just a little bit of fog created by cool air temps next to warm water temps. Now, at the very bottom of your pot where the metal is in direct contact with heat, that's going to be closer to something boiling off. So if you're not stirring it, you're going to have 95 or so degrees down there at the bottom where you're actually going to be getting some boiling off. Whereas in the middle or toward the top of your liquid in your pot is still going to be 185. So it might be 180, 95 here, 10 degrees difference at the top of your pot, especially if you have a skinnier, taller pot. And that's why sometimes, steels that are real skinny and tall aren't as efficient as the short and fat ones because you get more separation of temperature. Whereas short and fat ones, there's not as much variance in your temperatures. And then a little science there, but so you're not getting any boiling off at those temperatures. That's just like a fog. Steve, if you want to go to the material science page and you want to pull up acetone or ethyl acetate and look how it impacts LDPE and HDPE and polyethyl toluene, then I don't care if you've had classes on it or not. I've been to the sites. I know they're rated at C, and that's not good, period. There's no argument about it. I don't care how many classes you took or whatever. It failed you if you don't realize that. They have these charts for that reason. Now, there's just no reason to argue about it anymore. Acetone and ethyl acetates will eat that plastic up, period. Ethanol won't. If we had pure ethanol, it's perfectly fine to store in plastics. But with acetone and ethyl acetate, it's a C rating, and it's not good, period. That's coming from huge laboratories that did experiments. Fact. That's a fact. It's not even arguable. I don't know why you're going on about it, brother. Past it. Get past it. I mean, it's just a fact. And it has nothing to do with pressure. This has nothing to do with osmotic pressure or anything. It's the contact with that plastic acetone. Do pure acetone in a plastic jug and see how long it lasts. That's, pure acetone, high percentage acetone, not the watered down stuff, but buy some pure, and ethyl acetate. Put that in some plastic and see how it holds up. I hope I can find that site. I can share the link with you. Okay, acetone effect on HDPE. Acetone will not dissolve or cause caustic failure of HDP at room temperature. However, prolonged exposure can cause the polymer to swell slightly and induce environmental stress, cracking, and will break it down, especially in thin or stressed containers. Acetone should only be used in HDPE containers for short-term storage or application. And when it was breaking that plastic down, there's actually parts of it that are literally coming off, and especially with ethyl acetates as well. So, I mean, it's the science is there. I mean, there is a somewhere I've got it saved. I'll look for it and find it, and it's a material science page, and it is an industrial page for people looking for packing material for certain products that they have. And it gives you a rating for every product, plastic, every container, every solvent and solute out there. And I've seen the ratings on what acetone and ethyl acetates are on HDPE, PE, LDPE, and PET. And it's not good. Ethanol is perfectly fine. If you have pure ethanol, perfectly fine. Not saying that'll bother at all. Won't. It's an A rating. But acetone and ethyl acetates is a C rating, and it will break it down. Fact. I mean, that's just the facts, and that's coming from industrial standards. That's coming from, huge laboratories that have conducted mega experiments on it. It's not me just, going from guessing or, what limited chemistry I had in college that I never applied in my life. It's a fact. Yeah. Yeah, he did. Now, methanol is that's a different product. I'm not talking about methanol or ethanol. I'm talking about ethyl acetate and acetone, which is also in our heads. It's not the four shots. The four shots is methanol, wood alcohol. I'm not talking about methanol. That was never brought up. I'm talking about acetone and ethyl acetate. If you look those up on the charts for plastics, it's not going to be rated good for HDLP, LDPE, I mean HDPE, LDPE, or PET. It's just I've already looked. It's not. Yeah, methanols aren't good to fool with at all. Don't ever fool with the methanols. Yeah, and what they do on the show is not an educational thing. The show is entertainment only. It's not facts. They do deal with some facts on there, but a lot of it is just content. It's content creation for entertainment purposes, and it's good and entertaining. But don't look at it as if they're giving you instructions on how to do this in real life, because it's just for entertainment purposes. It's not, sometimes they do stuff that are good, and it's like marking them. Oh my God, they act when they got a lacto infection. They act like it's the first time they had seen it. I know them fellers been shining and stuff since they were kids. They worked with popcorn and JB Raiders since they was young. They was doing it since they was teenagers. I know damn good and well they've run into a lacto infection over the years. That wasn't the first one they ever saw. But for the show, they put on like, oh my God, what's wrong? Well, what's going to ruin? We need to get help out here. Somebody. That's just for entertainment. So don't look at the show as a factual or a guide. And definitely don't store liquor for long term in plastics. Trust me. Unless it's pure. If you have pure, ethanol, 198 proof, put it in plastic. It's fine. It'll be just fine for long term. It'll be just fine because there's very little to none acetone or heads in that, because it's pure ethanol at that point. But definitely once you get lower proof and you've got heads and it's not being, you haven't made cuts, you definitely don't want that in your plastics. And microplastics, it's not a conspiracy theory. Yeah, and like I said, the Coke, even the Coke products, that the polyethyl toluene, that's what the plastic is they use for 2-liter bottles. That was perfectly fine, and it is. But they were leaving these out in the sunlight, and sure enough, it was breaking it down, and plastic was coming off. Now, a while back, biphenyls, or BPA, synthetic chemical primarily used to harden polycarbonate plastics. Definitely not cell-based products, but BPA was a big concern, and they started finding out a lot of these biphenyls are endocrine disruptors, and they led to a lot of health issues that can lead into food and beverages, raising concerns. And that's why they started taking them out of a lot of the plastics. And that's just, part of the evolution of plastics. They learn about certain things, and BPAs back in the day, ain't nobody worried about it. Now, as things, resins and some of the stuff that was using some of these plastics, well, maybe we found out that's not so good. Well, that's cancer causing. We got to eliminate that. So that, there's been learning, over the evolution of plastics, and, the bipheноls and BPA is just, you know, another learning block that we've learned. And food grade plastics, when it says food grade, and I agree. Like I was saying, mayonnaise. You can leave that mayonnaise in that plastic jar in the refrigerator until the mayonnaise just crawls out, right? And that plastic won't be a bit bad. It is food grade and it's perfectly fine for that food. But if mayonnaise had acetone in it, it's not going to be so good. And it's I'm not saying there's no such thing as food grade plastics. There's lots of plastics that's perfectly fine to use for food. It's great. It's a very cost effective thing. It's definitely much cheaper to produce than glass, but for certain things, and certain chemicals, it's not good. But yeah, there's perfectly fine food. I mean, imagine buying bread in a wood box or a glass, instead of just a plastic bag, right? Or having to buy everything, and it's very efficient. It's awesome. I mean, it's helped industry. It's helped keep the cost down. It's help save trees. It helps cut the need to make a lot of glass out of the sand and stuff. So it's definitely very, very cost effective and awesome. But we do learn over time that certain ones can cause issues, and and having acetone and ethyl acetate in and polyethyltoluene, I think it might have been a B for PET, but LDPE and HDPE, it was a C rating. That means it breaks it down. In fact, I mean, but yeah, there's I don't think you're getting my point at all. I think you do know that the element has lots of charts, and there's thousands of chemical elements. And I'm not talking about all the myriad of chemical elements. I'm talking specifically about alcohol. I'm talking about acetone and ethyl acetate. So I think you're trying to take this argument outside the scope of where I originally started. This argument focuses on, is it safe to keep alcohol with ethyl acetate or acetone in the alcohol in a plastic jug for long term? The answer is no. That's a fact. Let's leave it at that. I'm not saying plastics don't have their place in our society. I'm not saying there's no such thing as food grade plastics. I never said anything of the sort. I'm saying that you do not want to store ethyl acetate or acetone in HDPE, LDPE, or PET for long term storage. Fact, end of story. Now, you can bring all the other things into it you want to. I'm glad you learned a lot about plastics, but this is what I'm talking about. I'm not outside that box. So focus on the topic. The topic is no ethyl acetate, no acetaldehyde, any of those acetones in the plastic. It's not good. Plastic has its place. It's awesome. It's a wonderful product. But for certain things, like what I'm talking about, it's not. So I'm not saying that they don't break down. They do. And that's great. I know that, but that's not what I'm talking about. The chemicals in our alcohol and why it is not good to store that. I mean, you can either agree or disagree, but it's a fact. Not talking about food grade anything. Not saying plastic in cars are bad. It's definitely cut the costs on a lot of things. You're trying to take this argument outside the box. I'm keeping it ethyl acetate, acetone, ethyl aldehydes. That's just not good in the plastics that they're storing it in. Period. End of story. Hello, Miss Tammy. Yeah, you don't want them in the microwave. You don't want to heat your food up. But I shouldn't have even said that because I just wanted to focus on alcohol, and it's just not good. And our message to people out there, Steve, is to tell people, do not store your alcohol for long term in plastics. That's the message we want to get out, and that's a fact. You should not do that. microplastics are a problem if they dissolve in your liquor. Would you agree with that? Because that is detrimental to your health. It's just factual. And I'm focused on just that. I'm not saying anything about the rest of plastics. Plastics are awesome, have a wonderful part. And this is the last time I'll talk about it. I just want to make sure that our listeners do know that they shouldn't be storing it in these little bags. You know, it's great to put in a little bag to take to Maggie and pass out the pouch. But when you get home, put that in a jar. Don't leave it in that pouch in the refrigerator for a year or two and then drink that. It's just not going to be good for you, especially if it's the heavy stuff that I get at some of these swaps and festivals. Yeah, the jars come way up. I'm glad I stocked up on a bunch of them. I was getting them for $8 at Walmart. They had a sale a few years ago. It's been about 3 or 4 years ago, and they were like $8 on sale. I bought a big old stack, about 4 5 foot tall of them. But even and I'll when I go to these festivals and stuff, I'll put it in a pouch. I'm not going to take a bunch of jars and hand out a bunch of expensive jars. I mean, I have, but it's easy to put them in a pouch for a weekend and say, drink that thing up, take it home, put it in a jar. But you know, probably not best to store in a pouch. Probably should have a label on it. Don't store in this pouch, because even those pouches, they're not even probably HDPE, LDPE, or PET. They're probably some other plastic. It's even worse. Who knows? Oh yeah, yeah. We're beating the dead horse. I just want to make sure that our listeners know about beer. Probably not so bad. Wines, you don't see them putting that in plastic. Maybe the box wines, I guess they do, don't they? But probably not good either, because there's a lot of heads in wines. So even then, but they're not as concentrated. But yeah, I definitely do not recommend storing it long term. My eyes, you gotta watch my eyes. 'Cause I do. I'm like a gecko, man. I can just sit there and not move. Set my eyes. Think I'm frozen up. Maybe I just need to move all the time. Hey, I'll tell you what. When I get my leg bouncing, old Clint thought I was having a stroke or something because my head was bouncing, because I've got a hyperactive leg. And he messaged me, "Are you all right?" I guess he thought I was stroking out. My head sitting here bouncing from my leg. I'll start drumming that leg, man. It gets to going. Yeah. Well, hopefully that'll come down. Yeah, I knew you'd talk about that. I just got to there. Yeah, I bounced my leg. I've had hyperactive leg syndrome since I was a kid. And I don't know if you can tell my head a little bouncing right now because my leg's going like I normally do. And you can probably hear that's my shoe on the floor. And Clint thought I was having a stroke. He thought I was stroking out. That's funny. I appreciate the concern, though. Clint's like, "Man, are you okay?" Yeah, man. One kernel, two, three. Got to pinch them kernels, man. Hey, I'm about that bad though. Yeah, I learned a long time ago. Profit is not a dirty word. A lot of people feel guilty about making money, and if you are, don't get in business. Selling a product. If you feel guilty about making money, just labor your ass off for minimum wage the rest of your life, and be a happy, humble, poor man. But I learned from a early age, there's nothing wrong with making a profit. That's what feeds the family. That's what makes the world go round. If you can't make a profit, you know, then I guess you're just a philanthropist that's willing to offer up your services for nothing, as a you're just a charity, a walking charity, which is great. There's honor to that. But that also doesn't put food on your table and drink in you, and you got to have that to survive. So if you're going to continue to be charitable, you're going to have to profit at something. Unless you just want unless you want to be a complete charity and just have them take care of you while there's nothing wrong with living that way. That's humble way of living. And I guess that might be one of the purest ways and ways Jesus wanted people to live. But there's nothing wrong with making a little money as long as you spend it and help others make money too, right? That's what makes, the world go around. That's what makes, our economy work. Is everybody works, everybody profits, and everybody spends. Nothing worse than somebody makes a lot of money, won't spend any, and they get on, they just save it on, like old Scrooge. They don't spend it, they're tight and, make people work for nothing, and there are a lot of people out there that'll do that. But, if you spend a little, help people out, help brothers out, it's like, say, ordering from some of our friends might be a little more expensive than ordering from a Chinese store that's shipping millions of goods over. But that few dollars helps, feed their family. And profit's not a dirty word, and that's what they take. They've taken their time out to contribute to us, help us. And so sometimes you got to pay it back, right? And that's what it's all about. So having a little profit's not a bad thing. You gotta get by. I would never, I mean, we used to back in the day, and there's no doubt that, we probably have microplastics lodged in our liver, our filter system. It doesn't break down, in our bodies. Maybe the butyric acid does. Butyric acid breakdown. No, butyric acid in your stomach cannot break down plastics. Well, it's a pungent short chain fatty acid, which it is, and that's why we get it in our mashes. Associated with the smell of vomit, right? Lacks the chemical capability to dissolve or depolymerize common plastics like polymethylene, polyethylene, or polyethylenes. Plastics are highly resistant to acids, and it's hydrochloric acid. Yeah, that's why some acids are stored in certain plastics because it's cheap and they don't break them down. But some acids are stored in glass for a reason. It'll dissolve that plastic in a heartbeat, like nitric acid probably would. You usually see that in glass. Yeah. So will not. So it'll stay in your system. Unless you can pass it through. So like our livers get it. I don't think it ever makes it out of our livers. And I know it's definitely hurting some of the fish. We got microplastics in the ocean. It's not so much here, but like in India and other places, it's just everywhere. It's floating. Like you was talking about how, the sunlight breaks it down and it's floating on the surface, sun breaking it down, and it literally breaks it down into its original form. And, you've got cellulose, acetates, butyrates, and, a lot of synthesized. A lot of it's created from the oils and petroleum based plastics. So there's a lot of different types of plastics, and We need to get off this plastic coffee. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. And now a fermentation vessel, very low percentages, very little in there for a couple few weeks. A lot of people, frown on storing wines in these plastic water jugs like I do. These 5 gallons, even the purists say that's bad. And it probably is. I probably should get glass containers. Um, Two reasons. A, for the concern of the plastic, but it's not high enough percentage and concentrated. So it's not as bad, but they're also slightly porous, whereas glass isn't. So that's the biggie. Yeah, old timers definitely um, use the barrels to mix in, but a lot of times they were using steel barrels. Didn't see a lot of plastic barrels back then. Mostly steel ore drums is what just carbon steel oil drums. And that was horrible too. No, I understand, and I think you might have misunderstood me. I'm not against plastics. I'm not against there's certainly food grade plastics and great, but I think at one point you were saying it was okay to store alcohol in them and ethanol, yes, but once you get some acetones and ethyl acetates and acetyls in there, acetaldehydes and stuff, then they got a C rating and they're not so good. So yeah, that was my whole point is don't store liquor in them. I thought you were saying it was okay too, and I was like, no, no, it's not. But we're good. Made moonshine mayonnaise. It's not bad at all. My goal is to make moonshine sauce for pasta. This is my pissed off. Oh, that's funny. You had me going for a minute. Oh yeah, and look what it'll do to styrofoam. Try to carry some of that gasoline in the styrofoam cup and see how that works. Yeah, it'll break that shit down in a heartbeat. That's right. Put some alcohol in it and make it all better. Bullheads. Well, there is a place here in Kentucky that has the certain type of silica sand that's great for glass making. Uh, yeah, and they mine it here actually. So there's certain specific types of silica and sand that they look for in glass making, and yeah, beaches too. They have to do a lot of dredging because a lot of their sand gets washed out, so they have to dredge and bring it back or haul it in. Yeah, so that's a good way to. I'd rather them just clean the glass up and keep reusing it though, melt it down and reform it, um, because the actual mines for the really pure silica that makes the good glass. It's kind of a limited resource. That's why they located to this one place, Kentucky, and there's certain places in the United States that have high percentages of it. And this one area close to where I went to college has that kind of sand that's really good for specific types of glasses. Um, Not sure if it's just our normal ball jar glass or if it's more of a specialty glass. I'm not sure. Don't know that much about it, but I do remember them locating here for that purpose, and they mine it and they make glass with it. So, Yeah, it's good for that, but I'd rather them grind it up and melt it down and make more glass with it because it is a limited resource. And I'd hate the fact that we use it all up and end up having to go to China to get the right silica for a specific kind of glass. But there's interesting, um, lots of different types of glass. You know, a lot of people, unless you do a little research on it, which I did a little, I don't know that much about it, but I've done some research on it in the past. And look at the lime glass that they used to make, carnal glass. There's lots of different glasses that's been used in the past, leaded glass, even, you know. But very interesting, you know, the Corning glass that can handle the temperatures. A lot of interesting. Um, or stainless works. You know, stainless is fine for old new liquor in too, but it's expensive. What's going on, Dougster? Yeah, yep. That's right. You know, I just want to make sure that people out here, you know, don't want to store their liquor in plastic jugs, you know, especially headsy stuff, which we get a lot of. It's best in a barrel. We can all agree on that. Probably second best in a jar, and stainless. If you got a big stainless vessel that you can seal, that'll work too. But probably best to limit it to those. And I don't want anybody, you know, getting sick or having issues with it. But I'm also not dogging the plastic industry. It definitely has turned our lives around. It's been, you know, it's been huge. It's definitely um, been a money saver. It's lightened the weight of vehicles where we can save fuel and make them more efficient. It's definitely one of the most efficient ways for storing foods. And, you know, absolutely. Right. Yeah. It's Maggie's. It's going to probably be tougher every year. You know, they have the ALE there, and it gets federal. If they could handle it locally and deal with it locally, I mean, we've met the sheriff there and talked to the deputies. They don't give a fuck. As long as you don't get drunk and disorderly, they don't care. But when the feds come in, they got to do their jobs, right? And you know, they got ALE there watching people, and it's just going to get worse because, like I said in the past, I'm not saying anything negative about ALE. That's their job. They've chosen it, and their job is alcohol law enforcement, and that's their whole purpose is to enforce alcohol laws. In any state where you do that, you've got police that focus, you know, have that laser focus on just alcohol. So they regulate the distilleries, they regulate the liquor stores, and they regulate the illegal making of it and the illegal drinking of it in dry areas, you know, where it's not allowed to drink it in public, right? So that's public intoxication, public drinking, and they will enforce that. So they're kind of strict on it there, you know. Now, after the party, we get outside the hotel and we're on private property there. And that's why we're able to drink there. And that motel says as long as these people don't get rowdy and want to pay $200 plus a night for our hotel, by God, they're going to drink on here and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. And that's the fact. They can't because it's private property. Now, if you get in fights and start destructing property or doing other things, then they're going to do something about that. And they, you know, in the hotel, they don't want that. As long as we keep it clean and fun, um, yeah, it's going to be a party. I know there were some feds there last year, and they didn't like it. And and they were trying to, you know, be underhanded and find out more about who's done what. We didn't give a shit. We were going to sit there and drink and called them out. They didn't like it, and you know, not wasn't a damn thing they could do about it. Their hands were tied. But definitely, you know, drink responsibly. Don't get in your car and go from there. You know, they're going to get you. You know, and don't get any fights. Don't let them. You know, they want to try to push you to that so they can bust your ass. And then once they bust you, then they start asking the questions. Take you a little easy on you if you answer these questions. You know, fuck all that. You know, just be drink responsible. Don't get out and drive drunk. You know, Ann doesn't drink, so she drives. And there's nothing wrong with sitting in the passenger side, you know, seat drunk. You know, there's no laws against that. So, you know, you're good. But yeah, be careful. and definitely don't sneak it in. We've had Cooler Gate, or Tom got caught with some. I guess might have had some liquor Jello and some Jello shots and some liquor, a little bit plastic pouches and stuff in the cooler. One person had it, and I don't know if that person told or somebody saw and told, or maybe one of the feds or somebody saw. But next thing you do, they're confiscating the cooler, dumping it in the dumpster, and if anything's said about it, you can go down and talk about it while we sit in the jail. And nobody said anything about it because that's the last place you want to go talk about it. I want to go dumpster diving, but I think they watched it pretty well. Do they do full bags? And that's been so long. I was thinking they had plastic, but maybe that's just the spout on it. But I don't know. I haven't bought a box wine in so long. I make my own now. Well, the vodka is a different story. Vodka is distilled to 196 proof, or else it's not a vodka. So it's pretty much pure ethanol, and then it's proofed down with water. So ethanol and water aren't going to be a problem. It's the headsy things, right? Now, something esterifies, it's no longer ethyl acetates or acetaldehydes or acetone, because, like I was talking before, the molecular structure changes and it's no longer that compound anymore. It's changed into something else. That's called synthesizing. So you can start with one compound, synthesize, and end up with another compound, and it's nothing like the original compound or chemical, or element. Uh, so yeah, it's not that's a problem. Beer, they line beer cans with certain plastics because it's such a low percentage. There's 95% water, 5% alcohol, and other things, and next to no heads, right? So it's very, very low. Not going to be an issue. And they do put a best buy and expiration date on them, so maybe that has something to do with that. Um, but yeah, it can be. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen box wine. But I've have thought about, if I could get some that's got like went bad or something, but I guess that means it's going to be pretty much a vinegar. Yeah, it is time for some shots. Damn, it's almost 11. But man, it's a good conversation. That's some good questions, and I'm glad we talked about the plastic thing, Stephen. I'm not down on plastics, and I'm glad you've educated yourself on them. I'm not that much on them as far as they're what they originated as, or in the actual making of them. But I did spend a lot of time in doing some research about that because I felt very strongly about that, and I always wondered if they told us back in the day about the milk jug and the liquor, if that was just something to keep us from drinking and to cut back on the moonshining, or if it was actually something there that had some teeth to it. So I did a lot of research, and as I have had, quite a few college chemistry classes, organic chemistry and regular chemistry, and uh, and so I did some research and found that that is probably not a good idea, because I always thought at first I looked at ethanol and said, yep, by God, you can store that ethanol in those, no problem at all. And if it's pure ethanol, you can. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, what we're storing in there ain't just pure ethanol. Let's look at some of these other compounds. Are they on the list? And I started looking, sure enough, acetone, C rating. I'm like, oh. And then ethyl acetate, C rating. Oh, okay. Um, so probably if we had pure ethanol, fine, but there's some other things in there, and there's probably other compounds in there as well that are probably B rated or C rated. And I didn't think any were D or E, which means it would just like the gasoline would just eat it up. But a C rating would be concerned, and then there is going to be um, right. The pouches are food grade, but we're not putting food in there. So if you're storing Jello or Jello pudding, or mayonnaise or ketchup in one of them, it'd probably be perfectly fine. But again, with the liquor having acetone and ethyl acetates in it, um, ethanol probably pure would be fine too. but it's that acetone and ethyl acetates really that's the solute, that's the solvent that you have to watch out for. Medical grade, yeah, I mean, and it's fine for certain medicines. I'm sure it'd be fine for, you know, storing dry penicillin in, or, you know, certain medicines or other things in. I mean, there's certain solvents that are going to be not good, and there's lots of other things that are perfectly fine. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some issues. I think cirrhosis and other issues, liver issues and kidney. I think it causes issues there as well. But yeah, there's lots of concern, and there's lots of research being done on it right now. And yeah, you know, people like me and you kid around a lot of times. Sometimes we have to say on a serious note, because you know it's definitely something to, when it comes to your health, that it's not a joke of matter, and it can be serious. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't remember their name either. They come in, and I'll give them a little bit of room, but just enough rope to hang himself. Then they'll hit to punt him. Right now, medical grade. What? Let's talk. What does medical grade actually mean? You know, it means that it's doesn't contain bacteria or things that can harm you. Medical grade is safe to, you know, store, but is it going to serve cryogenics? You know, that's used in medicine. Probably not. You know, is it gonna, you know, contain, you know, able to contain certain compounds and things that we use in, you know, making medicines? Probably not. But for other medications and stuff, it's perfectly fine. You know, it's like this pill bottle. You know, it's for aspirin. Perfectly fine for aspirin. But would it be good for every other compound that's used in medicine? Probably not. That's HDPE. But you know, so medical grade, does that mean it can be used for everything in medical, you know, in the medical industry? Definitely not. There's a lot of things that have to be contained in glass. You know, glass is not really the only thing. And that's, you know, if they could store it in plastic, trust me, they would store it in plastic. But there's certain reagents that have to be stored in glass, because plastics just eat them up, right? So, you know, food grade, medical grade, okay, something food grade. That does that mean you can heat your food in it? No, it means you can store certain foods in it. Now, does it mean you can store all the foods in it? Maybe, maybe not. You know, there might be certain foods that contain, you know, so much acid, that certain types of acid that might break it down. So, food grade, you know, what does that really mean? What, all foods or certain foods? They've tested the specific food that it's in, yes. But does that mean it can be used for everything in the food business? Probably not, you know. So, you know, what does medical grade and food grade really mean? You know, it's, I think it's a marketing, you know, thing, because it's definitely not good for everything in the medical industry, and some of the food grade ones probably not good for every food in the industry. And it may not be because it breaks the plastic down. Sometimes it may not keep the food fresh like it should, you know. Things to think about. Yeah, and you know, I think there'll probably be a time, maybe hundreds of years in the future, that they'll look back and they'll be able to dig up a grave and say, "Oh, this person must have existed between 1927 and 2084, when they used plastics heavily. Man, look at all these little microplastics in their livers and in their systems." And may be able to, Instead of carbon data, it's plastic data, right? Look at all the plastic in this person, man. That was definitely in this century, from the 1920s to the, you know, couple centuries or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah. Well, thing about profit margins is competition. And that's what makes America and capitalism so great, is not allowing, people to have monopolies and having competition, because for every price gouging person out there that's wanting to charge more for their product, there's somebody out there who's like, well, I'm going to fuck this dude. I'm going to make the same thing he's making. I'm going to charge 10% less and he won't sell a motherfucking bit. And I'm going to make all the money. And they do. And all of a sudden, that person that's got the higher price, well, I can't believe he came into my market, stole my idea, and now he's selling it cheaper than me. Damn him. What am I going to do? I'm going to either go out of business, or what am I? I'm going to lower my prices on him. And that works. That's how capitalism works. So that's the balance. And that's why we can't allow some of these mergers of these companies that try to take over and corner the market. That's why that's why we have Congress step in and say, no, we're not going to allow this merger. We're not going to allow you to monopolize and price gouge. And that's what keeps the competitive spirit alive. And we can't allow that. So that's why Congress sometimes blocks these mergers and businesses. Well, I'm just going to buy that guy out. He ain't going to undercut me. I'm going to buy him out and then raise my prices back up. No, we're not going to allow you to sell. Well, that's not the American way. Yeah, it is. That's part of it. And that's why socialism doesn't work, because, socialism is, you're going to only make this amount of profit and that's it. And people lose, who's going to want to go to college and spend 8 more years and 12 more years becoming a doctor and a medical doctor and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing all this if they're only going to make 65 a year and or 125 a year? That they have to have some kind of compensation to dedicate all that time, or else they're going to be like, well, I can just make 20,000 less doing this and not even, waste my time. And that's where socialism just doesn't work. And it always ends up with monopolization, greed, and government running things. And then it turns into totalitarianism, where they tell you what you're going to do and you're going to like it, or, we'll put you on the line and shoot you, or we're just going to put you in a work camp, because you're going to do it our way. That's always what happens when you go from socialism, goes to communism, to totalitarianism. And it's just not good. That's why we've been able to have such a good country. That's how it works. That's what makes ours work is competition, right? And people, capitalism and people undercutting. Well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it cheaper. Well, and that competition keeps the prices down, and it makes it competitive markets. And that's the best way, So we've seen all the different forms over the thousands of years, and we have come up with the best way if we can keep it. That's going to be the problem. And that's where I stop, because I don't want to get political, but we need to keep it the way it is. We don't need that socialism creeping in, and that's not politics. That's common sense. It doesn't work. It's never worked. It's not good. And the only thing it's going to do is raise your taxes and put you more under somebody's thumb than you ever dreamed of. So it doesn't buy you freedom. So don't let them kid you about the free lunches that Mondami and all them are promising. I don't care what party it is. It don't work. And you can see a lot of businesses moving out of New York and relocating other places, because they're not going to pay those unfair taxes anymore, because they don't have to. They can move. That's the capitalism at its finest. So that's what happens. Everybody moves out, and they have to keep increasing taxes to feel that burden, where the people that paid the brunt of the taxes before, all these big industries that paid all the taxes, everybody thinks that everybody pays all the taxes, and our little bit of income tax that we make is a middle income. No, we don't pay shit for taxes compared to what the rich and the industries pay. They pay most of the taxes, whether you realize it or not. They're not exempt like everybody says. Oh, they don't pay no tax at all. They do. They pay lots. They pay the major brunt of them. Do the research. It's a fact. So they move out of New York. then the middle class takes a big hit because they got to pick up and pay more taxes than they ever have because they've lost their big share of the taxpayers in a lot of their big businesses. And you're going to see that happen in New York, and it's going to hurt them. Hopefully we get things turned around because it's going to be the ruination of one of the biggest city. It's crazy things that are happening. It's just that makes sense to me, and I'm not getting political, but it seems what logic has been lost. It's good. What was once good is now considered bad. And what was once bad is now, it's like everything's turned backwards and they've convinced people that things are good. It's just crazy. Our times are crazy. And I like this because this is our escape away from that. So let's not talk about it. Yeah, glass is definitely, and I'm getting way behind ranting. Yeah, it's a big problem. India, China, there's so many in Asia and all over. Man, it's horrible. We think it's bad here. You go there and our cities are getting bad too. But you go to some of these places and it's like, wow. And even, Paris and a lot of European countries are starting to get filthy. Don't need to say why. Yeah, DuPont, 3M for the big plastic people, absolutely. And it wasn't good. They ruined the hemp industry. I will talk about this a little bit. The hemp industry, there used to be a thing called hempcrete, and hemp was combined with the concrete, and it would make a really good concrete mix. And they got away from it. They used it in the old world and lots of other places, but because they, the DuPonts and them got rid of all the textile industry, got rid of all the hemp products because it was a competition for the rayon and polyester the DuPonts were coming out with. That all the clothes and all the bags and everything could be made with rayon and polyester and all this, and it was great. And that's why they started the marijuana madness and and tried to make it look bad and give it all a bad name and pretty much outlawed except for rope for the war use. And that was about it. Hemp was out. And that's why they made the reefer madness shit, to get rid of it. And they spent a lot of their money getting hemp out of the markets because it was a better alternative. There was a lot of good clothing made from hemp. It's kind of like cotton, cheap, very, very cheap to grow, very durable. They used it for, ship ropes and, a lot of these big destroyers and aircraft carriers and all this back in World War II and stuff. They used hemp ropes for anchors and stuff, right? We grew a lot here in Kentucky. It's one of the largest growing places in the nation. But, hemp got a bad name. Now hemp is back and you can take the, I can't remember what they call it. It's the center part of the plant and pulverize it and mix it into, it's a fibrous, like a fibrous cement. And it makes one of the best cements and it lasts much longer than just regular concrete. And some of these houses that were built a century ago, 2 centuries ago, 3 centuries ago, that are 800,000 years old, 10 centuries, maybe with some of that hemp fibrous stuff still there, and replicating, a lot of the concretes and stuff that, I'm having heads bouncing, but some of the concretes and stuff they made back in the day and some of the roads, we can't even reproduce those today, man. So technology is not always going forward, is it? Yeah, I know. And why not recycle? I guess, here we had to offer 5 cents. Remember, 5 cents a bottle. You return your bottle, you get 5 cents. We had to give people an economic incentive to recycle. It wasn't just good enough you was helping Mother Earth. No, that's not good enough. You have to give them a nickel and they might do it. And otherwise, they're just going to throw it down, and throw it in the landfill and it won't do any good. I say every garbage truck should back up and dump their load into a conveyor that has people sorting it. And, the organic stuff just has to get washed down and used for, I guess, fertilizers and other things, but break down every plastic, every bottle, every paper product, try to separate it all out, and it should be. I think eventually it'll be a law. If we find plastic in your garbage can, you're going to be fined. If we find glass in your garbage can, you're going to be fined. You know, and if you don't put the glass in the glass bin, the plastic in the plastic bin, the paper in the paper bin, you're going to get fined. So there's an economic incentive, right? And instead of rewarding you, it's going to penalize you. So eventually that's what it's going to be, and probably rightfully so. People don't like it, but if that's what it takes, maybe it's a different type of financial incentive, right? But a lot of farmers and people that have gardens compost. They know to take all that food waste, all that stuff, compost it, plastic, glass, paper. I know a lot of people put paper in a pulp pit. They got a barrel with water in it. They throw it in there and stir it up, make pulp. They press that out. You can make logs to burn in your fireplace with the free paper that you get every year. Newspaper, ads that you get in the mail, just break the plastic off the glassine envelopes, glassines off the envelope, throw it all in there, pulp it. You can make it. You can wipe your ass with it if you need to. But I think eventually we're going to have to get to that. Yeah, absolutely. Look at Palantir. Look at what's that other company? Shoot, I have to open up my money thing here. Vertiv. Look at what they make. Look what Intel just made on their comeback. They were $16 a share 4 or 5 months ago. Now they're 120 or so. They were 130. There's a lot of money to be made there if you know what you're doing, and you can lose a lot too. So it helps to do the research. But there's a lot of people using AI to help them invest. I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing, bad thing. I don't. I invest, but I go on things that I'm familiar with. But Palantir and Vertiv. Let me go to my watch list and I can give you some good ones. Yeah, look what Vertiv Holding, VERTIV Holdings has done in the last couple of years. Been huge. Nvidia, I had invested in Nvidia. I had to sell it, and I did the same with gold. I got in a tight spot and I sold it. Do I regret selling it? No, because I made a lot of money on it and it got me out of a tight spot. Do I wish I didn't get in that tight spot and could have still have it? Absolutely. But it did serve me well, and I made some good profit on it at the time. But, right now, SK Hynix, it's a Korean company that makes chips. They just announced that they're going to invest a bunch. They're going to make a bunch of chips. And sure enough, in a day, it's plus 27.29%. A lot of people only make 4 or 5% on their, savings accounts or money market accounts, in a year. It did 6 times that in a day. So you just got to watch news like that and know what, be up on it and be able to invest a little bit, but don't ever invest more than you can lose, because it's like gambling. Don't ever gamble more than you can lose. And any company I mentioned, that's not advice. That's just something I was watching and might have invested in, but I can't give out monetary advice. I don't give out legal advice, but I will talk about things that, you probably should or shouldn't do, because it might be legal or illegal, and be careful if you do. That's right. And, that's something too, a lot of people have a lot of sympathy for migrants. And these people need to come here. It's a better way of life for them and all that. And it's great, for them, but it drags our country down for us to have to try to put them on our welfare system. It drains our system. So we're better able to function strong and be economically strong and help them in the country where they are than it is to have them all come here and drain our economy to where and it is. That's the big thing. So it's much better for us to be a strong economy and help them where they live and help them with a better life. And should tax dollars go to that? Probably not. A lot of churches should pick up. I hear the Vatican getting involved in a lot of politics and stuff. Maybe they shouldn't get as involved, and maybe they should do a little more philanthropic work and help a lot of these countries that, they talk about migrants and everybody should take these migrants in. The Vatican don't take in migrants. They take in very, very, very few. So, kind of do as I say, not as what we do kind of thing for them. And, you know, think about it that way. So they do a lot of pointing, finger pointing, but when it comes down to it, how many million have they taken? No, they don't. They might take a few Orthodox Christians and stuff in that are migrant and for asylum purposes that are endangered, but you don't see them taking on mass. Yeah. So a lot of people sometimes on the surface they're one thing, but when it comes down to it, they're not quite the same. They'd like to point fingers a lot, though. And I'm not nothing against Catholic religion at all. I think it's any good Christian religion is great, but I think that sometimes they need to practice what they preach a lot, and they don't. I think it's like, certain parties, want to put a lot of migrants in certain colored states. And when somebody said, okay, well, we're going to send these migrants to Martha's Vineyard, all of a sudden that wasn't acceptable anymore. So a lot of people say, oh, welcome them in. Okay, well, we're going to put 5 of them in your home. Well, no. Okay, well, where are we going to put them? We don't have enough jobs for them. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, we got a lot of low end jobs. We need farming done. And we can't get regular people to farm anymore. We need them in here to farm. Well, a certain party said that back during the slave days, thing being about cotton. We need those low wage earners to come pick our cotton during slave days, right? Yeah, that's basically the same thing they're saying about bringing in migrants too, to replace lower wage workers. They just want slaves. That's greed. We don't need them. We can help them in their country better, and we can help their countries be better and be more productive. That's what has to be done. We can't just bring them all here. Be great, but to say, I just want world peace and for everybody to get along, and we should just bring in all the migrants in here and take care of them and nurture them, you just sound like a dumb blonde in a beauty contest, which is clueless to how the world works. We can't do that. Sorry, but those are the hard truths. Some people can deal with it. Some people can't, but it is the facts. And as long as our economy is booming and we're a very productive country, we can help a lot of people. But when we're dragged down and our economies, we can't afford to do it. Our medical, we can't afford to give them all Medicaid and Medicare. That's pretty much close to being tapped as is. We can't allow them to have our Social Security. That's pretty much tapped as is because of the greed of the government and both sides. So it puts too much a drain on very sensitive areas of our society, and we just can't have it. I mean, that may sound bad, and if so, I'm just a horrible person, but whatever. But if we're not productive as a country, we can't help other countries. Yeah, it's great to be a day trading. I don't do the day trading thing, but I have made some pretty good investments. Yeah, and we do have to clean the country up. We definitely do. I mean, and I'm not pointing fingers at a certain society or certain groups of people, but look at London, Paris is a perfect example. LA, New York. Once used to be nice, clean streets people could walk on fairly safely. Now it's dangerous. You got certain areas that you can't go to. Well, New York, I guess LA's always had the crime areas that you shouldn't go to, but London and Paris, they never had those areas like that. Now it's just filth on the street. You got people shitting all over on the street, pissing, defecating on the street. living on the street. Um, just that's not a good way to live. Can't have it. Got it in California. It's just dirty. You got people, you know, spray paint graffiti all over, our beautiful, you know, statues and monuments. That sucks. Sorry, if you want to spray paint a building that says, hey, come spray paint our building, do a mural. We like that. That's cool. But to do it to monuments and stuff, no. And you don't have pride in your country. You don't care. That's a horrible type way to be, It's very selfish. Trying to deface things, that other people get enjoyment from viewing. That's very, it's not a good way to be. Yeah, there's a lot of good places for silica. But certain, like there used to be like a soda lime, a lime type silica based lime that made the lime glass and other type glasses. Some of them are really unique and hard to find. Absolutely. Yeah. Polyester, rayons. Horrible. Right. And then the Carolinas have a lot too. There's a lot of places in Carolina where you can do some gemstone mining. It's right on the border of the Carolinas. Cowie Valley we used to go to. They've got rubies and sapphires and all kinds of cool gemstones that you can mine. Lots of quartz too. Doesn't help gout. Oh wow. What is does salt help? Does that what salt helps? I'm googling it. I think it does. Or maybe that's goiters. No, it's the opposite. No, salt's not good for it. What is that salt's good for? No, it's iodine in the salt. It's good for something. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah, you don't want gout's the worst thing. Or salt is the worst thing for gout. Need to read more about gout. I think I'm confusing it with something else. Excess of uric acid in the blood. Okay, yeah. Yeah. From kidney problems. Yeah. Failure to excrete enough uric acid. Okay. Yeah, you definitely don't want to drink in that and with that. Definitely don't. Definitely don't want to drink. So yeah. Even certain medications, yeah. Aspirins, water pills, diuretics. So you definitely want to stay hydrated and eliminate some of those things. Yeah. And kidney issues. So there's the drinking. Yeah, you definitely don't want that. Oh yeah. I mean, look at you know, it's amazing how much clothes I've got way too much, and I don't get rid of anything. I might get skinny again, by God. I might be able to fit in them jeans again. Might be able to wear them 32s again, them 30 pants. I might be able to get in them 30s, you know. And everybody saves all these clothes and hoards them, and all the waste, of overproducing. A lot of them, and a lot of them ends up at Goodwill, and they're just full of clothes, they can't even hardly give it away. What's going on, Joe? How you doing, brother? And buddy, we've been talking about everything here tonight. Really? That's interesting. Yeah, this takes a shot. Shadow popped in here Saturday. He's got a lot on his table, man. He's got a lot of things going on with his family and got to deal with some issues and personal issues, health issues of his own that we know that he dealt with in the past, but it's more than just his health issues. So he's got other things to deal with. And so he's going to pop in here from time to time, but he's got to take care of business at home. And, kind of like you, Mr. Clint, we love you and love having you here, but anytime you got to take care of business, you got to take care of business. So definitely miss him, miss you when you're not here, brother. All right, Penny. Good to see you, brother. Yeah, it's getting late. I ain't drink that much. I got enough to get riled up a little bit, but I definitely ain't drinking that much. But yeah, anytime I get drinking a little bit, I'll talk about the ills of the world because I do have a lot of concerns, man, and I don't like where things are headed, and it's not political. Unfortunately, the media and thing want to make it all political because they want to keep us divided because a divided country can't ever, decide on anything and are easily taken over, especially if you propagandize, brainwash, and try to, that's part of the techniques of brainwashing is to make things that are right seem wrong, wrong seem right, and it loses people kind of lose their sense of reality and stuff, and especially the more they play into it, read into it, and let themselves be consumed by it. Then they start saying things that they can't believe, like taxes, more taxes are a good thing, you know, got people brainwashing and saying, taxes are good. We need to pay more taxes. We really should. And it's like, whoever said that before? What the hell's wrong with you, man? We need to work out a way to get less taxes. So that's right. All right. Is that liking or licking? I'm pretty sure it says licking. Yeah, it's about that time. All right, Clint, we'll see you, brother. That was 10:57. Hell, he said that 30 minutes ago. Lord, let me get caught up here quick. I'm going to have to scroll past a little bit of this. Yeah, definitely research it. I'll try to find that site that talks about all the different plastics and the solvents that will break down certain plastics. It's very interesting. And it was a industrial. I mean, it was a chemical place that did the research. It wasn't just some backwoods. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's certain people that did lead for body filling and stuff that lived long lives, and then there's aristocrats back in the day that drank out of leaded cups that didn't. So and it drove them crazy. So I'm sure there's happy mediums that you can be around it without it getting in your system to certain levels. But I think some people are probably more sensitive to it probably than others. Yeah, yeah, we've all had it. Oh, Miss Jess, how you doing? I hope you feeling better. We stayed on here long enough for you to jump in here and say howdy. I'm here much longer. I'm 30 minutes behind. Everybody's leaving. By the time I get caught up, there ain't gonna be nobody here. I'm talking to myself. Hemp Creek, yeah, good stuff. I'm that far behind? Jeez, oh Pete. A lot of hate, brother. It sure is. Yeah, they've been brainwashed into hating the American way, and unfortunately, that's one of the things they've learned is you get into the school systems and you teach them from a young age, and young impressionable people are much easier brainwashed than old men and old men and women who have developed opinions and our thoughts on things. So, and that's a problem. And you see some of the Cocoa Puffs that they talk to. Um, I saw something behind me. There's Ann. So, and you're like, and these are the people teaching our children. And it's like, oh my, we are in trouble. We need to really sit down and look at our educators and do a lot more scrutinizing on who we have educating our children and what they're saying and what kind of books they're being allowed to read in the libraries. Yeah, yeah, we need to. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, I was thinking it was something else. What I think I was thinking of goiters and not gout. Iodine. Yeah, it was. I was thinking of goiters and not gout. Goiters, iodine deficiency. And for a goiter, it would be helped to have iodized salt. So that's what I was thinking. Goiters, yes. Gout, no. Yeah. And drinking, probably not good for either. Yeah. Toke. Yeah. I think a lot of token is what allowed it to slip so much. Some of us allowed things to get out of hand and we were just too high to notice that it was slipping. And now I think it's slapped us back into reality. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell's going on here? This isn't the same America that was here 20 years ago, man. What's happened? How do we get here? How do we allow it to get to this point? And that shouldn't be, they polarized us into thinking it's a Democrat Republican thing, but it's not. And I don't know. I guess people are buying a lot of people out. The media is being controlled by somebody outside the U.S. or socialists or worse, Islamists. Just say it, I'm not going to dance around it. So we got to take a look at things in perspective and make some alignments. All right, y'all. It's 11:34. That's hell spelled backwards if you turn it upside down. You ever looked at that? That's crazy, isn't it? But been a good talk. Got a little off topic. Drank a little bit. Got a little off topic. That's all right. But certain things I guess need to be said. It's probably not the venue for it. And again, I don't like getting out on these tangents. Plastic's fine, but I don't want to get political on here. That's probably for another different podcast. And I don't like getting political because people just get mad at you. If you think nobody can disagree anymore and say, well, this is my opinion and this is your opinion, and we can agree to disagree and drink a beer and be happy and pat each other and say, see you tomorrow. Not anymore. It's like either you agree with me or I hate you and I'm going to unfriend you. And it's just crazy. People are crazy these days, man. So they can't just, disagree, agree to disagree and laugh. And, I got, a lot of people on all spectrums of politics and a lot of them disagree with me. We can laugh and still drink and have a good time. But some people, man, even family members unfriend me and will never talk to me again. And it's like, if you want to be an idiot, that's fine. That just goes right along with what I've been saying. Yeah, definitely, brother. Definitely. All right, y'all. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, hanging out with us and chatting with us and voicing your opinions. It's good. Maybe I don't know. I would do another podcast. I think Damon and I were originally going to do a political podcast and all, and I'm like, man, all it's going to do is just divide people. It'll take half the people that disagree with us. They'll hate us. They'll never come back anymore. They'll leave the militia. They'll leave. They won't watch our podcast. I don't want to do that. I just want to have something that we can get away from all that. So I'm sorry for bringing it in, and I'll try to keep it out in the future better because I do want to make this a place where that's not the topic, because you can't talk about stringing beans without somebody bringing politics and all that shit into it anymore. So, it's just terrible. There we go. We actually got a question. Good. Do I have to use hot water or can I throw creamy corn in a bucket with dead yeast? No, you definitely have to. If you want to convert your corn, you have to gelatinize it. And in order to gelatinize it, you have to heat it in water and keep it at 185 degrees Fahrenheit or higher for 90 minutes or more. So you can cook it, but it's hard to cook that way and not scorch. So a lot of people choose to steep, and you can steep it like in a cooler or something that'll hold heat real well. And like if you're doing 10 gallons and 20 pounds of corn, which be a pretty decent little ratio, or 25 pounds, whatever you want to do, 2.5 pounds of grain per gallon is okay. So you would hard boil 10 gallons, but like put 8 in there or 7 in there with your corn, stir it up, and every 15 minutes add half a gallon, right? And by the time you get to 90 minutes, you've run out of water and you've maintained that 185 degree because that gelatinizes the corn. That's basically stripping the starches out of the corn, right? So once you strip those starches out of the corn, now you got to convert those starches because they're complex. They're all a bunch of glucose molecules all bound together in a big long string, and yeast can't eat them. So they're complex. They're considered a complex sugar, polysaccharides, many saccharides. So we have to use amylase to break those down. So we can use some of the high temp alpha amylase to chop them up, randomly chop them up. And it looks like a big string of pearls is a good way to look at it. And I've got some pictures I can show you. And as long as we got questions, brother, I'll stick around and answer them. But a lot of them look like this. Shit. Here we go. So the starch on the right is called amylose, and the complex starches on the left is called amylopectin. And these are polysaccharides, many saccharides chained together, right? And so that alpha amylase that we put in there will break all those, and each one of these little blue dots is a glucose molecule, right? So the alpha amylase will go in there and it'll chop these up randomly everywhere and make them less complex, and they become what's called an oligosaccharide. So, or a trisaccharide or disaccharide. Some of them get chopped up into 2s or 1s or 3s, but most of them are still complex and you can't eat them. So then we go in with a beta amylase or a glucoamylase, and it basically chops every one of these up into 1 or 2, and yeast can consume those. So that's the reason, right? That's when you want to use your glucoamylase. So you've got to start out with that. I recommend highly the liquid high temp alpha. So after you cook that corn or steep it for 185 plus Fahrenheit, and a lot of people say, well, mine didn't get a good conversion. I'm like, really? What temperature? Well, it started out at 180, 90, but by the time I was done, it's only 140. Okay, well, you didn't follow the instructions. Now you got to follow. It's got to be 185 plus for at least 90 minutes. That gives you a good solid gelatinization. Does it have to be that much? Sometimes it'll do it a little quicker than that, especially if it's grinded, a little finer. Whereas a cracked, it might take the full, 90, but go the full 90, right? So you get sure to get all those starches, out of the corn to start with. Got to get them out before we can even start to convert them. So once we gelatinize that, you'll put in that liquid high temp alpha at 185 degrees. You'll stir it in, and almost instantly, you'll see that corn go from a gelatinous state back to a liquid state, and that's hydrolyzing it. So we're going back to a liquid hydro state. So you stir it, and just let it sit. And now it'll get cooler. Now your glucoamylase will tell you a temperature on there. So if it's 140 degrees, you'll add it at the 140, stir it in real good, and then you're pretty much done. You'll let it sit overnight, cool off till yeast pitching temps. You can pitch a little yeast in, a little bit of nutrient in, and you'll be good to go. But you want to take your hydrometer. We've got a proofing hydrometer, and we can see what kind of starches we pulled. Now, we can't see if they're fermentable starches, but we can see if we got a good conversion. We got a lot of starches out. Now, that glucoamylase will sit there and it'll debranch. It's called a debrancher, and it's an endoenzyme. So it'll debranch. I'm sorry, exoenzyme. It'll debranch from the outside. All these little ones, it'll chop them all up. where the alpha is an endo. It starts in the middle and it chops everything up in the middle and it just breaks it all into small strings like this starch, amylopectin. Just take those branches. It's got like 2 or 3, and it chops those up into like 5 pieces, right? And all these, chops everything up into 5, 10, 15 pieces, right? And sometimes, like a blind squirrel gets a nut, it'll chop it into 1 or 2 that a yeast consumes. But for the most part, they're going to be still oligosaccharides that yeast can't consume. And then your glucoamylase. Now, look on the label. It'll either tell you to add it 140, 120, 100 degrees, but it'll usually be one of those 3. And, because it's got a different formulation. So just follow the instructions on the label at what temperature to add it and then stir it in. And then wait, until your temperatures get down to about 90. If you're going to use a Daty Red Star Distillers yeast or a bread yeast or something of that nature. If you're going to use like an EC 1118 or more of a champagne wine yeast, you got to let your temperatures cool off a little bit more because the different yeasts prefer different temperatures. But yeah, and then you'll get a good conversion. You can test it with iodine and see if you got starches present or not. If it turns real dark, you still got starches present. If it stays kind of orangey, you don't. So it'll get a dark black bluish if there's still starches present. You don't have to do that, but definitely get you a hydrometer. And it's a triple scale hydrometer, not the proofing one. And it'll help you measure how much starches and how much conversion you got. How long would a 10-gallon run take on a propane? It takes about 4 hours. It'll probably take about 4 hours till you get to your hearts and into your hearts and about done with your hearts. You should run it on out and get the rest of your tails out. There's good alcohol in your tails. So about a 6-hour run. You can look at it sitting for about 6 hours. Should have a drip within about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour on propane. And then, probably at the 4-hour mark, you probably be getting near to the end, but don't use this as a test. Okay. He said 4 hours. I'm at the end of my hearts. Cause that's not the way it works. You got to learn to taste and smell and know when you're starting to get into your tails. And that just comes with experience. But yeah, we're here on every Tuesdays and Saturdays. But jump back in and I can go into just as graphic and long-winded detail as you want to. And I can also talk about adding other grains and what temperatures to add those in. And definitely join us on DIY Shine. You can see the little streamer on the bottom here. And it'll come up just in a second. DIY Shine is still building on Facebook. Join us on there. And we, ask your questions there anytime and we can get to them as we can. Or jump in here on Friday or Saturday night at 8 Eastern or Tuesday nights at 8 Eastern. Now, this next weekend I'll be here, but weekend after that I won't. I'll be in Maggie Valley. But after that, you definitely be able to run a 10-gallon on one bottle. But that is one of the issues with propane is always keep 2. And always have 2 pretty much full. Might keep 3. And that way you always have 2 full and 1 on there that may be half. Because inevitably the question comes, will it be okay if I leave my distillation while I go get another propane? And will that ruin everything? What do I need to do? And we can cross that bridge as it comes to it. But if it happens during your run, disconnect, put your next bottle on, light it up, careful. Adjust your heat the way it was before and just pick right up and go keep going. It won't be a problem. But that is one of the drawbacks on propane is that you have to change those bottles out. A lot of people go into electric for that reason. And we can talk about that as well. But you caught us. We usually don't stay on to 11:45. Usually we got long-winded tonight. We got into a discussion about should you store your liquor in plastics. And there were some mixed opinions on whether you should or not. So I wanted to get graphic on that and make sure that none of my people are storing their liquor in plastics for the long haul, because I don't care what anybody says. I've had enough science. I've read the science, material science from laboratories that says ethanol is fine, but heads, and a lot of the alcohols that are contained in the heads, the acetone and the ethyl acetates and acetaldehydes and things of that nature, they don't do so well. So ethanol will, but that won't. But don't store your liquor long-term in plastic. If you want to move it from the still in a bucket to a proofing room where you dump it in a big old stainless steel vat and you add water to it and proof it, get it just right and put it in jars, that's fine. But just don't leave it in that bucket for weeks, months, and years and then think about drinking it. Absolutely not. But yeah, just top in here. Yeah, we can get into the chemistry of it, and that's what I really like. I like the science aspect of it. A lot of people don't, and that's something about this. You can just, if you can just follow simple instructions, you don't have to understand the science and what makes it work and make great liquor. I mean, I know people that's made some of the best damn liquor, and they don't understand the first lick of science of it all. They don't understand any of the science. They could care less, and they make some of the best damn brandy that you'll put your lips on. And it's just trial and error and learning the hard way, and intuition and innovation, adjusting things just on, well, this was different this time. I guess that temperature is a little bit hot and it's not as good. That yeast stress, because it fermented, it was hotter than we usually have it. I guess it was that temperature that made it. Let's do it cooler next time and see if that helps. And sure enough, it helps. Okay, so we know not to get it, our ferments this hot anymore with this yeast. Maybe we need to change yeast during the summer. Definitely a good idea, right? So during the summers, you want to use your daty yeast and your bread yeast that handle higher temperatures, and then maybe in the winter go more towards the champagne, wine, and lager yeast that can deal with lower temps, right? So, yeah, it's great having you here, Tyler. Join DIY Stein and Steel Building. We'll get you in there, and you can ask questions there, and here every Tuesday and Saturday, 8 Eastern time. But yeah, join Phil Billy's page on, I see you're on YouTube. So, oh shit, I forgot to put the comments back up. Other people can't see your comments. So join Phil Billy Moonshine on YouTube, wherever you're watching this right now. Like it, subscribe, and anytime this comes on, you'll get a little notification. YouTube's real good about notifying you. So your phone will ding. It's like, oh shit, those guys are on talking about moonshine. I better go get on here and ask my questions. So that'll be a good reminder for you. And do join the Facebook page, and I can give you some good scientific graphs, and we can talk in depth. And I enjoy talking the science part of it, because we don't get a lot of that, and I think it's important for people that want to know to get the information that they need to, get a better understanding. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you back here Saturday night at 8, right? I understand some people are partying on Saturdays, but you can watch the podcast. It's there. You can watch past podcasts. A lot of people have the same questions. So watch some of these past ones and check them out, and come with your questions. That's what we're here for. That's the whole reason we have this. There's lots of videos, and you watch past videos, but you might have to watch several, like all these other videos out there that, before you get your question answered, you might have to watch 6, 8, 10, 12 hours of videos, right? That was my whole reason for doing this. So people can just come direct with a question. We can answer it directly, and you don't have to spend half your life watching videos to get it answered, right? Or Google it, or asking some groups with people that don't know what they're talking about. And there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about. So we try to eliminate a lot of that. And we'll talk about opinions and facts. When it's opinion, we'll let you know that it's, just an opinion. And when it's factual, we'll let you know when it's a scientific fact. So thanks for dropping in, everybody else. Good to see you, Gary. We'll see you all Saturday. Until then, shine on. Peace out. Love y'all. And have a great week.